Hey guys, tonight we journey back to ancient Greece, not to witness legendary battles or hear speeches from famous philosophers, but to experience something far more surprising. Tonight, we will quietly follow an ordinary Greek man through a completely ordinary day, a day that might seem strangely familiar in some moments and unbelievably different in others. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these peaceful journeys into the forgotten corners of history. And now, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let us wander slowly into the ancient Greek world. The first rays of sunlight had barely touched the hills surrounding Athens when Damon opened his eyes. No alarm clock woke him. No church bells rang. No buzzing devices demanded his attention. Instead, the sounds of distant roosters, barking dogs, and neighbors beginning their morning routines drifted through the cool air. Damon stretched slowly on his simple sleeping mat. The room around him remained dim. Ancient Greek homes were often surprisingly dark compared to modern houses. Windows were small, designed more for security and shade than for filling rooms with sunlight. The house belonged to Damon, his wife Thalia, their children, and several household slaves. Such arrangements were common throughout much of Greek society. Even families of moderate means often owned one or more slaves who handled household tasks. The floor beneath him felt cool. Outside, Athens was already beginning to wake. Merchants prepared their stalls. Potters arranged freshly fired ceramics. Fishermen returned from the coast, carrying the night's catch. The city itself smelled very different from a modern city. There were no gasoline fumes, no engines. Instead, the air carried scents of wood smoke, olive oil, animals, fresh bread, and occasionally less pleasant odors from crowded streets and open drains. Damon rose and wrapped a light garment around himself. The Greeks did not begin their mornings with large breakfasts. Their first meal was usually simple. This morning was no exception. A piece of barley bread sat waiting. Bread formed the foundation of daily life. Rich or poor, nearly everyone depended upon it. Wheat bread existed, but was often more expensive. Barley was more common and more affordable. Damon dipped the bread into diluted wine. To modern ears, this may sound unusual, yet drinking water could sometimes be unreliable, and wine mixed with water was consumed throughout the day by many Greeks. Pure wine was often considered excessive or uncivilized. The children slowly gathered around the household table. Conversation remained quiet. The day ahead promised work. Work dominated life for most Greeks, just as it dominates life for many people today. Popular images of ancient Greece often focus upon philosophers debating ideas beneath marble columns. In reality, most people spent their days earning a living. Damon worked as a maker of pottery. His father had practiced the same craft. His grandfather before him had done likewise. Family professions frequently passed from one generation to the next. As sunlight strengthened outside, Damon stepped into the narrow streets. Athens spread before him. The city was impressive, but not beautiful in the way many modern visitors imagine. The famous temples certainly stood magnificently upon the Acropolis, but much of the city consisted of dusty roads, crowded buildings, wandering animals, and busy workshops. Ancient cities were noisy places. Metalworkers hammered bronze, donkeys brayed, vendors shouted prices, builders chipped stone, children played, arguments erupted, business negotiations unfolded. Life moved constantly. As Damon walked, he passed a public fountain. Water collection formed an important daily task for many households. Women and slaves often spent considerable time carrying water jars through city streets. Nearby, a baker removed fresh loaves from a hot oven. The smell drifted through the neighborhood. Even thousands of years later, the scent of baking bread remains one of humanity's most recognizable comforts. Damon exchanged greetings with acquaintances. Greek cities were deeply social places. People constantly interacted. News traveled quickly through conversations. A neighbor knew who had married, who had died, who owed money, who had won a court case, who had embarrassed himself at a public gathering. Information flowed continuously through human networks long before newspapers or social media existed. Eventually, Damon arrived at his workshop. Rows of unfinished pottery lined the walls. Bowls, plates, storage jars, drinking cups, oil containers. Everyday life depended heavily upon pottery. Without plastic, glass production on a large scale, or metal containers for everyone, pottery served countless purposes. The work began immediately. Clay waited to be shaped. Orders needed completion. Customers expected results. The romantic image of ancient life often disappears quickly when one examines the realities of labor. Pottery production demanded skill, patience, and physical effort. Hours passed as Damon shaped clay upon the wheel. His hands moved automatically from years of experience. The spinning wheel turned. Wet clay responded. Simple lumps gradually transformed into useful objects. Outside, the city continued its rhythm. Occasionally, visitors entered. Some discussed prices. Others inspected completed products. One customer wanted storage jars for olive oil. Another needed cups for an upcoming family celebration. Every purchase reflected ordinary life, continuing throughout the city. By late morning, the workshop had grown warm. Summer heat in Greece could become intense. Without modern cooling systems, people adapted through architecture, clothing, and daily habits. Many activities slowed during the hottest hours. Shade became valuable. A cool breeze became precious. Damon paused briefly to wipe sweat from his forehead. Nearby workers shared stories. One discussed a recent political debate. Another complained about taxes. Someone else worried about rising grain prices. The topics sound surprisingly modern. Across thousands of years, many human concerns remain remarkably similar. Governments, money, food costs, family responsibilities, work pressures, the details chain. The themes often remain. As noon approached, Damon prepared for the next part of his day. Like many citizens, he planned to visit the marketplace. The agora stood at the heart of public life. It was far more than a shopping area. It functioned as a social center, business district, political arena, and gathering place all at once. Leaving the workshop behind, he joined the growing flow of people moving toward the city center. The streets became increasingly crowded. Farmers arrived carrying produce. Craftsmen transported goods. Visitors entered from surrounding villages. Travelers brought news from distant regions. The entire city seemed to converge upon the agora, and as Damon stepped beneath the bright Mediterranean sun and approached the bustling marketplace, he noticed a growing crowd forming around a speaker whose raised voice was attracting attention from every direction. He slowed his pace, curious to discover what had captured the city's interest. That curiosity would soon lead him into one of the most important parts of ancient Greek daily life. Damon slowed his pace as the gathering crowd thickened around the speaker. In Athens, a crowd almost always meant one of three things. Someone was selling something unusual. Someone was arguing about politics. Or someone was making a fool of himself in public. Today appeared to be a mixture of the last two. The speaker stood upon a low stone platform near the edge of the agora. His arms moved dramatically through the air as he addressed the growing audience. Citizens paused to listen. Shopkeepers glanced up from their work. Even a few passing slaves briefly turned their heads before continuing on their errands. Public speaking occupied an important place in Greek life. Many modern people imagine ancient Greece as a land filled with philosophers discussing profound ideas beneath marble columns. Such discussions certainly occurred. Yet, a great deal of public speaking involved ordinary disputes, political complaints, legal disagreements, and endless arguments about civic affairs. The man on the platform was criticizing a proposed tax. Some listeners nodded approvingly. Others shook their heads. Several interrupted loudly. Within moments, 3 separate arguments had begun among members of the crowd. No one seemed particularly surprised. The Greeks loved debate, not merely formal debate, everyday debate. Arguments could emerge almost anywhere. At markets, at dinner tables, at workshops, at religious festivals, even while standing in line, waiting to purchase fish. Damon listened for a few minutes before moving on. The marketplace offered far too many distractions to remain focused on a single speaker. The agora stretched before him like the beating heart of the city. Merchants displayed goods from across the Mediterranean world: olive oil from nearby farms, wine from distant islands, fine pottery, bronze tools, fresh vegetables, dried figs, honey, fish brought inland from coastal communities, animals destined for sacrifice or food. Everywhere people negotiated prices. The sounds blended together into a constant wave of conversation. Unlike modern stores with fixed prices, bargaining formed a normal part of commerce. A customer rarely accepted the first price offered. The seller expected resistance. The buyer expected negotiation. Both sides performed their roles. The process could continue for several minutes before an agreement emerged. Sometimes neither side yielded. The customer walked away. The merchant called after him. The customer returned. The negotiation began again. Damon paused beside a fruit vendor. The vendor proudly displayed baskets of grapes and figs. Nearby, another merchant sold garlic and onions. The smell filled the warm air. Ancient Greek cuisine was often simpler than many people expect. Meals relied heavily upon bread, olives, olive oil, vegetables, legumes, and occasional fish. Meat existed, but appeared less frequently on ordinary tables. For many families, meat was most commonly eaten during religious festivals when animals were sacrificed and portions distributed among participants. As Damon continued through the marketplace, he encountered an old friend named Nicias. The two men exchanged greetings. Such encounters frequently delayed daily errands. A simple conversation could easily consume half an hour. Greek society placed great value upon personal relationships. People invested significant time maintaining friendships, family connections, and community ties. Nicias immediately launched into local news. A neighbor's daughter had become engaged. A merchant had suffered heavy financial losses. A prominent citizen faced accusations in court. A farmer outside the city reported poor harvest expectations. Information spread through Athens with remarkable speed. There were no newspapers, no radio broadcasts, no electronic messages, yet news traveled efficiently through thousands of conversations occurring every day. Damon listened patiently. Much of the information would likely change before sunset. Rumors often evolved as they passed from one person to another. Even so, staying informed carried practical advantages. Knowledge helped people navigate business, politics, and social relationships. After parting ways with Nicias, Damon approached a stall selling writing materials. Literacy in ancient Greece was more widespread than in many earlier civilizations. Though far from universal, many citizens could read at least basic texts. Others relied upon professional scribes. Writing appeared everywhere in city life. Business records, legal documents, religious inscriptions, political notices, poetry, philosophy, private correspondence. The written word occupied an increasingly important role within Greek society. Nearby stood a group of young men gathered around a teacher. Education varied significantly depending upon wealth and social status. Boys from prosperous families often studied reading, writing, music, athletics, and rhetoric. Girls generally received more limited formal education, though practices varied among different communities and households. The teacher questioned his students. Several answered confidently. One stumbled badly. His companions laughed. The teacher appeared unimpressed. Ancient education could be demanding. Discipline was expected. Mistakes rarely escaped notice. Damon smiled briefly before continuing. The afternoon sun climbed higher. Heat shimmered above stone surfaces. Many Athenians began seeking shade wherever it could be found. Trees became valuable gathering places. Covered walkways offered welcome relief. Even animals seemed to move more slowly beneath the growing warmth. As Damon crossed another section of the agora, he passed near one of the city's law courts. The courts represented another surprisingly large part of Greek daily life. Athenians loved lawsuits almost as much as they loved political arguments. Legal disputes appeared constantly. Property disagreements, business conflicts, inheritance issues, contract violations, personal accusations. Citizens frequently represented themselves rather than relying upon professional lawyers. Success often depended upon persuasive speaking. A person capable of delivering a convincing argument enjoyed a significant advantage. Outside the court building, small groups discussed ongoing cases. Speculation filled the air. Who would win? Who would lose? Who had the stronger witnesses? Who might embarrass himself before the jury? Court proceedings could become public spectacles, attracting substantial interest. Human curiosity regarding other people's problems has evidently changed very little across the centuries. By mid-afternoon, Damon finally completed several purchases. He acquired olive oil, a small quantity of fish, fresh vegetables, and a few household necessities. The items were loaded into baskets, carried by one of the household slaves who had accompanied him. Slavery remained woven deeply into Greek society. Modern readers often imagine slavery only through the lens of later plantation systems. Ancient slavery differed in many ways, yet remained harsh and deeply unequal. Slaves performed countless tasks: domestic work, agricultural labor, mining, construction, skilled crafts, business administration. Their experiences varied greatly depending upon circumstances, but freedom and personal control remained limited. Most Greeks viewed slavery as a normal feature of society. Few questioned its existence. This reality reminds us that even civilizations celebrated for philosophy and democracy often contained profound contradictions. As the hottest part of the day slowly passed, activity in the marketplace began changing. Some merchants packed away goods, others prepared for evening customers. Workers started returning home. The pace became less frantic. The shadows gradually lengthened across the ground. Damon decided to stop at a public fountain before beginning his walk home. Several women filled large clay jars. Children played nearby. An elderly man sat quietly beneath a tree. Water splashed gently into stone basins. For a few moments, the scene felt peaceful. The constant noise of the marketplace seemed distant. Athens possessed many such moments. Despite crowded streets and endless activity, pockets of calm occasionally emerged. People paused. Conversations slowed. The city breathed. Yet the day was not finished. Far from it. For many Greeks, evening often brought the most anticipated hours. Work ended. Families gathered. Friends visited. Meals were shared. Stories were exchanged. And sometimes, invitations arrived for events that could continue deep into the night. As Damon rose from the fountain and began the journey toward home, he noticed a young servant approaching rapidly from the opposite direction. The servant appeared to be searching for someone. Moments later, their eyes met. The young man hurried forward and delivered a message. A wealthy acquaintance was hosting a gathering that evening. Several guests had already accepted. Food would be served. Wine would flow. Conversation would continue long after darkness covered the city. Damon thanked the messenger and considered the invitation. The workday had been long, yet opportunities like this were difficult to ignore. Without realizing it, he was about to step into one of the strangest and most fascinating aspects of ancient Greek social life. Damon watched the young servant disappear back into the crowded street. The invitation lingered in his thoughts as he resumed walking toward home. Such gatherings were common among wealthier Greeks, but each one carried its own character. Some focused on politics. Others revolved around philosophy. Many simply provided an excuse for food, wine, entertainment, and socializing. The sun was already beginning its slow descent toward the western horizon. Athens looked different at this hour. The harsh brightness of midday softened. Long shadows stretched across dusty streets. The temperature became more comfortable. Workers emerged from workshops. Market stalls gradually closed. Families began preparing evening meals. The city shifted from labor to leisure. As Damon approached his neighborhood, familiar sounds greeted him. Children chased one another through narrow alleys. Neighbors exchanged news from doorways. A donkey protested loudly while being unloaded. Somewhere nearby, a woman sang softly while grinding grain. Ancient cities rarely became truly quiet. Life surrounded people constantly. The boundaries between public and private space often felt much thinner than they do today. Many homes stood close together. Voices carried easily. Everyone knew something about everyone else's business, sometimes far more than they wished. When Damon entered his house, the household was already busy preparing for the evening. Thalia listened carefully as he described the invitation. She nodded. The host enjoyed a respectable reputation. Attending would strengthen useful social connections. In Greek society, relationships mattered enormously. Friendships could influence business opportunities, political support, marriage arrangements, legal disputes. A strong network of acquaintances often proved nearly as valuable as money itself. A simple meal was served before sunset. Bread, olives, cheese, vegetables seasoned with olive oil. Nothing extravagant. Many modern people imagine ancient feasts occurring every day. In reality, ordinary meals were usually modest. Most Greeks lived practical lives, shaped by routine and necessity. Grand banquets existed, but they represented exceptions rather than daily reality. After eating, Damon washed and changed into cleaner clothing. Appearance mattered during social occasions. One did not arrive looking as though he had just spent the entire day shaping pottery. The invitation specified that guests would gather shortly after dark. Unlike modern cities illuminated by electric lights, ancient Athens transformed dramatically once the sun disappeared. Darkness arrived as a powerful force. Oil lamps provided limited illumination. Moonlight helped when available. Otherwise, streets became difficult to navigate. People learned familiar routes carefully. A misplaced step could lead to an unpleasant encounter with a ditch, animal, or obstacle. As twilight settled over the city, Damon began his journey. Small lamps glowed behind windows. Voices drifted from homes. The scent of cooking fires lingered in the evening air. Above him, the first stars appeared. Without modern light pollution, the night sky often looked astonishingly vivid. Thousands of stars stretched across the heavens. Constellations guided travelers and inspired countless myths. Ancient Greeks spent far more time looking upward than many people do today. The host's residence stood within a prosperous section of Athens. Its walls enclosed a spacious courtyard. Servants greeted arriving guests. Lamps flickered along pathways. Laughter already floated through the evening air. Damon entered and joined several acquaintances. Greetings were exchanged, hands clasped, names repeated, recent events discussed. Every arrival triggered another round of conversation. The gathering gradually expanded as more guests appeared. Then came one of the most surprising features of elite Greek social life. The men and women separated. Respectable women, generally, did not participate in these evening drinking parties. The event Damon attended was known as a symposium. Today, the word symposium often suggests an academic conference. In ancient Greece, it meant something rather different. The evening typically consisted of drinking wine, conversation, entertainment, storytelling, music, and intellectual discussion. Participants reclined on couches arranged around the room. This posture immediately struck many foreigners as unusual. Eating while reclining became a mark of status among Greek elites. Guests leaned comfortably on one arm, while servants brought food and drink. The atmosphere remained relaxed at first. Wine was mixed with water in large bowls. This practice was nearly universal. Drinking unmixed wine was frequently viewed as reckless or barbaric. The ratio varied according to circumstances. Some hosts preferred moderation. Others encouraged stronger mixtures as the evening progressed. A servant filled cups. Another distributed snacks, nuts, cheese, fruit, small portions intended to accompany conversation rather than dominate it. Soon discussions emerged across the room. Politics appeared almost immediately. Athenians found politics nearly impossible to avoid. One guest criticized recent decisions made by public officials. Another defended them vigorously. A third interrupted with a completely different opinion. Within minutes, multiple debates unfolded simultaneously. Voices rose, hands gestured, arguments intensified, yet nobody seemed offended. Disagreement formed a normal part of social interaction. Many Greeks genuinely enjoyed intellectual conflict. Winning an argument brought satisfaction. Delivering a clever response earned admiration. Public speaking skills carried enormous prestige. As the evening continued, the subjects expanded. Military campaigns, trade, agriculture, poetry, religion, family matters, local scandals. Nothing remained off limits for long. One guest recited verses from memory. Another challenged him regarding a particular line. The resulting discussion lasted nearly half an hour. Elsewhere, two men debated the merits of different governing systems. The conversation drifted toward philosophy. Questions emerged. What makes a person good? Can happiness be taught? Do people control their own fate? What obligations exist between citizens and the state? Such topics fascinated many Greeks. Even individuals who never studied under famous philosophers often enjoyed discussing life's larger questions. Not everyone participated equally. Some guests preferred listening. Others dominated every conversation. A few simply focused on drinking. Human nature, it seems, has remained remarkably consistent. As wine continued circulating, entertainment arrived. A musician entered carrying a lyre. The instrument's gentle notes filled the room. Conversations quieted briefly. Music occupied an important place within Greek culture. Songs accompanied religious ceremonies, military marches, festivals, private gatherings. Children learned musical skills. alongside other subjects. The musician performed several pieces. Guests listened attentively. Some sang along. Others closed their eyes. For a few moments, the room felt almost peaceful. Then the games began. Ancient symposia frequently included various forms of entertainment. One particularly popular activity involved skillful wine throwing. Participants attempted to flick drops of wine toward a target using precise movements of their cups. Success generated applause. Failure generated laughter. The game sounds strange today, yet many ancient Greeks found it endlessly amusing. Several guests attempted impressive shots. Most failed spectacularly. The room erupted with good-natured mockery. Even Damon joined the laughter. As hours passed, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations became louder. Arguments grew more animated. Stories became increasingly exaggerated. A merchant claimed extraordinary profits. A former soldier described heroic actions. Another guest recounted an encounter with a famous public figure. Each tale somehow improved with every retelling. Exaggeration flourished wherever wine flowed freely. Meanwhile, servants worked continuously, refilling cups, clearing dishes, maintaining lamps, managing countless small tasks required to keep the gathering functioning smoothly. Most guests paid little attention. Such labor often remained invisible despite making the evening possible. Near midnight, one elderly guest began discussing strange foreign customs he had observed while traveling. His stories fascinated the room. People loved hearing about distant lands. Many Greeks never traveled far from home. Accounts from travelers offered glimpses into unfamiliar worlds. He described unusual foods, different clothing styles, foreign religious practices, unexpected laws. Some listeners expressed amazement. Others doubted every word. The truth likely lay somewhere in between. Stories often grew more dramatic during long journeys. As Damon listened, he realized how much ancient Greeks enjoyed comparing themselves with other cultures. They admired certain foreign achievements. They criticized others. Above all, they remained intensely curious. That curiosity helped shape many aspects of Greek civilization. Yet, despite the fascinating conversations, a deeper reality lingered beneath the evening's pleasures. Outside these walls, countless Athenians would never attend such gatherings. Laborers, farm workers, slaves, poor families, women excluded from participation. The symposium reflected only one part of society, a privileged part. Ancient Greece produced remarkable achievements, but access to many of its celebrated institutions remained limited. Hours slipped by. The lamps burned lower. Some guests prepared to leave. Others seemed determined to remain until dawn. The city outside had grown quiet. Most households slept. Only occasional footsteps echoed through distant streets. Damon finally rose from his couch. The night had provided entertainment, companionship, and enough conversation to fill several days. Yet another day awaited tomorrow. He thanked the host and stepped outside. Cool night air greeted him. The stars still shone brilliantly overhead. Athens rested beneath the darkness. For a moment, everything seemed calm. But as Damon began walking home through the silent streets, he noticed unusual activity in the distance. Several citizens carrying lanterns moved toward a large public building. Their expressions appeared serious. Curious whispers passed among them. Something important was happening before sunrise, and without realizing it, Damon was about to witness one of the strangest responsibilities expected of an ordinary Athenian citizen. Damon paused in the middle of the street and watched the lanterns moving through the darkness. Most Athenians should have been asleep at this hour. The symposium had ended late. The city was quiet. Even the stray dogs that normally wandered through the streets seemed unusually calm. Yet a steady stream of citizens continued toward the large public building ahead. Curiosity pulled Damon forward. He adjusted his cloak and followed. The building stood near an open area where public business was often conducted. As he approached, he recognized several familiar faces. Potters, merchants, craftsmen, farmers, and veterans gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices. Some looked tired. Others appeared irritated. A few seemed genuinely excited. "What is happening?" Damon asked one man he knew. "The assembly meets at dawn," the man replied. Damon sighed softly. Now everything made sense. One of the strangest realities of Athenian life was that ordinary citizens could suddenly find themselves involved in government business. Not professional politicians, not elected representatives, ordinary men. Athens practiced a form of direct democracy, unlike anything seen in most modern countries. Citizens themselves participated in important decisions. They voted on laws, military matters, public spending, foreign policy, political appointments. The system had limitations. Women could not participate. Slaves could not participate. Foreign residents could not participate. Yet among eligible citizens, involvement in politics became an expected part of life, and sometimes that involvement required waking before sunrise. Damon joined the gathering crowd. The sky remained dark overhead. Only a faint hint of gray touched the eastern horizon. Some men brought food. Others carried cushions for sitting. Many complained about the early hour. This too seemed remarkably familiar. Across thousands of years, human beings have never particularly enjoyed waking before dawn. As more citizens arrived, officials began organizing the crowd. Attendance mattered. Major decisions required participation. Persuasion mattered as well. Every proposal needed support. Every argument needed listeners. Politics in Athens often resembled a a giant public conversation, a noisy conversation, a competitive conversation, sometimes a very chaotic conversation. As the first sunlight appeared, the gathering slowly moved toward the meeting area. Hundreds of citizens took their places. More continued arriving. The atmosphere felt different from the symposium, less relaxed, more serious. People discussed real issues that affected daily life: grain supplies, taxes, military concerns, trade routes, public construction projects. These decisions could influence thousands of lives. The meeting began. Officials presented announcements. Reports were delivered. Proposals introduced. Then came the debates. One speaker stepped forward. He argued passionately for increased funding to strengthen defenses. The audience listened. Some nodded. Others crossed their arms skeptically. When he finished, another citizen immediately challenged his position. The second speaker received cheers from one section of the crowd and groans from another. Arguments continued, back and forth, hour after hour. Athenians took public speaking seriously. A talented speaker could influence enormous decisions. Words possessed power, sometimes more power than wealth, sometimes more power than social status. Many ambitious men spent years developing their rhetorical skills. A persuasive voice could change history. Not every speech was memorable. Some were boring. Some were confusing. A few stretched on far longer than anyone desired. The audience occasionally became restless. Heckling occurred. Jokes circulated. People whispered among themselves. Ancient democracy was not always a dignified spectacle. Often it looked very human, messy, emotional, unpredictable. At one point, a heated disagreement nearly erupted into a physical confrontation. Friends quickly intervened. The situation calmed. Such moments were not uncommon. Political passions could run high, especially when money or military affairs were involved. As Damon listened, he reflected upon how much time Athenians devoted to public life. Modern people often separate work, politics, and social activities. In Athens, these worlds constantly overlapped. Citizens discussed government in marketplaces, at workshops, during meals, at drinking parties, and now here at dawn. Politics formed part of everyday existence. Eventually, voting began. No secret ballots, no electronic machines, no private booths. Citizens indicated their preferences publicly. The process could feel intensely personal. Everyone could see where others stood. Support, opposition, agreement, disagreement. Nothing remained hidden. The results were announced. Some citizens celebrated. Others complained. Several immediately began arguing about the outcome. The debate, it seemed, would continue long after the official meeting ended. By mid-morning, Damon finally left. The city had fully awakened. Merchants opened stalls. Workers returned to their trades. Life resumed its ordinary rhythm. Yet the morning had already demonstrated one of the most unusual aspects of Greek daily life. A potter could spend the previous evening drinking wine and discussing poetry, then spend the next morning helping decide matters of state. The transition felt perfectly normal. As Damon walked through Athens, he noticed another familiar sight. Exercise everywhere. Young men running, wrestlers training, athletes practicing, groups exercising under instructors. Physical fitness occupied a central place within Greek culture. The word gymnasium itself came from the Greek world. These facilities served purposes beyond exercise. People met friends there, discussed politics, received education, conducted business conversations. A gymnasium could function as a social center almost as much as an athletic one. Damon stopped briefly to watch a wrestling practice. The athletes glistened with oil beneath the sun. Their movements appeared precise and disciplined. Spectators observed carefully. Competition fascinated the Greeks. Not only military competition, athletic competition, intellectual competition, artistic competition. They loved measuring skill against skill. Victory carried enormous prestige. Even local contests attracted attention. The culture celebrated achievement, yet training demanded sacrifice. Hours of practice, strict routines, physical discomfort. The glory visible during competition often hid years of effort. Nearby, instructors guided younger students. Education extended beyond reading and writing. Boys learned physical discipline as well. Strength and endurance were considered important virtues. The ideal citizen was expected to develop both mind and body. Whether people actually achieved that ideal was another matter entirely. After watching for a time, Damon continued toward his workshop. Work still awaited. Political participation did not eliminate economic responsibilities. Bills still needed paying. Customers still expected pottery. Clay still required shaping. Many modern descriptions of ancient Greece focus heavily upon philosophy and democracy. Less attention goes to the simple reality that most people spent much of their lives working. The workshop greeted him with familiar sights: unfinished pottery, drying racks, tools, dust, the smell of clay, comfortingly ordinary. Several orders required completion before week's end. Damon settled into his routine. Hours passed. The wheel spun steadily. His hands worked almost automatically. Outside, the city buzzed with activity. Inside, concentration ruled. Work possessed its own rhythm, its own quiet satisfaction. By afternoon, a customer arrived carrying troubling news. Not political news, not military news, something more immediate. A neighboring district had recently experienced a wave of thefts. tools disappearing, storage jars stolen, animals missing during the night. The reports spread quickly. Athens, despite its achievements, remained a city filled with ordinary problems. Crime existed, fraud existed, dishonest merchants existed, pickpockets operated in crowded places, locks and security mattered. Human nature had not yet evolved beyond temptation. The conversation drifted toward safety concerns. Several craftsmen discussed protecting workshops. Others shared rumors regarding possible suspects. No one seemed entirely certain what had happened, yet anxiety spread nonetheless. By late afternoon, the customer departed. Damon returned to work. Outside, clouds began gathering. The sky slowly changed. A cool breeze moved through the city. People glanced upward. Weather influenced ancient life far more directly than modern life. There were no forecasts, no weather applications, no radar systems. People relied upon observation, experience, instinct, and occasionally luck. The gathering clouds reminded everyone how dependent they remained upon nature. A good harvest, a bad harvest, rain, drought, storms, calm weather. These forces shaped fortunes more powerfully than many political decisions. As evening approached once again, the city settled into familiar routines. Families prepared meals. Workers headed home. Merchants counted earnings. Children played their final games before darkness. Another ordinary day neared its end. Yet for Damon, tomorrow would bring an experience that touched every Greek household, regardless of wealth or status. An experience involving religion, sacrifice, and the gods themselves. Because in ancient Greece, faith was not something reserved for special occasions. It surrounded daily life from morning until night. The following morning arrived beneath a sky washed clean by light rain during the night. Damon awoke to the familiar sounds of Athens stirring beyond the walls of his home. The air felt cooler than usual. Freshness lingered in the streets. Dust that normally coated every surface had temporarily settled. Today would not be an ordinary working day, at least not entirely. Word had spread throughout the neighborhood that a religious festival would take place before noon. Such announcements rarely surprised anyone. Ancient Greeks lived among festivals. The modern calendar contains holidays scattered throughout the year. Greek life, by comparison, often seemed woven together by an endless sequence of religious observances, ceremonies, sacrifices, and celebrations. Some festivals were small, others were enormous. Some lasted only a day, others stretched across several days, or even longer. Each honored particular gods, local traditions, or important civic events. Religion surrounded nearly every aspect of existence, not just during worship. Every day, every journey, every harvest, every marriage, every birth, every military expedition. The gods were thought to be involved in everything. Damon stepped outside and immediately noticed signs of preparation. Neighbors cleaned doorways. Families dressed more carefully than usual. Children displayed visible excitement. Vendors anticipated strong business. Festivals brought crowds. Crowds brought customers. Customers brought profits. The relationship pleased nearly everyone. After a modest breakfast, Damon joined the growing flow of people moving toward a public gathering area. The streets gradually filled. Old men walked beside young boys. Craftsmen walked beside wealthy landowners. Citizens mixed together in ways that daily routines sometimes did not allow. Religious events created shared experiences across social classes, at least among the free population. As Damon approached the gathering place, the smell reached him first. Incense, burning wood, fresh flowers, animal scents. Together, they created an atmosphere immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with Greek ceremonies. At the center of the activity stood an altar. Nearby, priests supervised preparations. Assistants carried supplies. Officials organized participants. Musicians waited with instruments. Everything followed traditions developed over generations. The Greeks valued proper ritual. Details mattered. Words mattered. Actions mattered. Performing a ceremony correctly was considered important. Mistakes could offend divine powers, and offending divine powers seemed like an unwise gamble. The crowd continued growing. People talked quietly while waiting. Many brought offerings. Others simply attended as observers. No one seemed particularly hurried. Festivals provided opportunities to escape ordinary routines. Work could wait. The gods demanded attention. Soon the ceremony began. Musicians played. Prayers were spoken. Participants raised their hands toward the sky. The atmosphere became noticeably more solemn. Even restless children quieted. For modern observers, one of the strangest aspects of Greek religion involved sacrifice. Animal sacrifice stood at the center of many ceremonies. To Greek worshippers, this practice felt normal and meaningful. To modern audiences, it can seem shocking. Yet within ancient society, sacrifice connected communities, traditions, and religious beliefs. The animal selected for today's ceremony had been carefully prepared. Prayers continued. Offerings were made. Participants watched attentively. When the sacrifice concluded, portions would eventually become part of a communal feast. Religion and food often existed side by side. Worship and celebration intertwined. The ceremony lasted much of the morning. Different prayers followed. Additional rituals occurred. Various officials performed designated roles. The crowd remained engaged throughout. For many Athenians, participation reinforced both religious identity and civic identity simultaneously. The city honored its gods together. The experience strengthened community bonds. After the formal ceremony ended, the mood changed almost immediately. Seriousness gave way to celebration. Conversations resumed. Food appeared. Musicians became more energetic. Children scattered in every direction. What had been a sacred gathering gradually transformed into a social event. This transition felt completely natural. Greek festivals often blended devotion and enjoyment. The two were not considered opposites. People could honor the gods while also enjoying themselves. As Damon moved through the crowd, he encountered acquaintances from various parts of the city. One discussed business opportunities. Another shared family news. A third complained about a recent legal dispute. Even during religious festivals, ordinary concerns remained present. Life continued. People remained people. Near one section of the gathering area, storytellers entertained groups of listeners. Greek culture treasured stories, myths, legends, historical accounts, heroic adventures. Generations grew up hearing tales of gods, monsters, warriors, and explorers. Many citizens knew large portions of these stories by heart. Today, one storyteller described the adventures of a famous hero battling impossible challenges. Children listened with wide eyes. Adults listened too, perhaps not quite as openly fascinated, but fascinated nonetheless. Stories possessed power. They educated, entertained, preserved cultural memory, connected generations. Nearby, musicians performed songs familiar to much of the audience. Several people joined in. Others tapped feet or clapped hands. The atmosphere became increasingly festive. By midday, the entire area felt alive with movement. Yet beneath the celebration existed another curious aspect of Greek religious life. Fear, not constant terror, but concern. The Greeks respected their gods deeply. They admired them, honored them, sometimes feared them. Unlike many modern religious traditions that emphasize perfect divine morality, Greek gods often behaved unpredictably in myths. They could reward, they could punish, they could help, they could hinder. No one wished to attract unwanted divine attention. This uncertainty encouraged careful observance of rituals. Better to remain on good terms with powerful beings. As the afternoon progressed, Damon accompanied several friends through the city. Festival days created a different atmosphere everywhere. Workshops operated more slowly. Business discussions became less urgent. People seemed happier, more relaxed. Even strangers appeared more willing to engage in conversation. At one point, the group passed a small shrine located beside a street. Such shrines appeared throughout Greek cities. Religion did not remain confined to large temples. Sacred spaces existed everywhere. At crossroads, near homes, beside public buildings, along roads, the divine presence felt woven into the landscape itself. Travelers often paused briefly. A prayer, a small offering, a respectful gesture, then onward with daily business. For Greeks, this behavior required little thought. It simply formed part of normal life, as natural as greeting a neighbor. Later in the afternoon, Damon found himself speaking with an elderly veteran. The old man had traveled widely during military service. Their conversation drifted towards superstition. The veteran laughed, then admitted he carried a lucky charm for years. Many Greeks considered themselves practical, yet superstition remained common. People interpreted signs, watched bird movements, consulted oracles, sought favorable omens, avoided unlucky circumstances. The boundary between religion and superstition often blurred. Human beings have always searched for certainty, especially in uncertain times. The old veteran shared stories about soldiers delaying journeys because of unfavorable signs, captains altering plans after unusual events, communities seeking guidance from sacred sites. Damon listened with amusement, yet he knew many educated citizens behaved similarly. Even philosophers sometimes respected traditions they privately questioned. The future remained unpredictable. Why risk angering fate? By late afternoon, the festival gradually began winding down. Families prepared to return home. Visitors departed. Musicians packed instruments. Officials concluded final duties. The city slowly resumed its normal rhythm. Yet the celebration left people feeling connected, refreshed, part of something larger than themselves. As Damon walked home, he reflected upon how completely religion shaped Greek existence. Modern people often separate sacred life from ordinary life. Ancient Greeks rarely made such distinctions. Religion touched politics, family, agriculture, trade, travel, military affairs, education, virtually everything. Back at home, evening preparations began. Children excitedly recounted favorite moments from the festival. Neighbors exchanged stories across nearby courtyards. The smell of cooking drifted through the neighborhood. Darkness approached once more. Another day neared its conclusion. Yet as Damon sat outside, enjoying the cool evening air, a distant commotion caught his attention. Voices, laughter, cheering, and something else, the unmistakable sound of competition. Some kind of contest had begun nearby, and in a civilization obsessed with proving excellence, competition rarely remained a small affair for long. Tomorrow, Damon would discover just how far the Greeks were willing to go in their endless pursuit of victory, honor, and glory. The distant cheering continued long after sunset. Damon listened from his courtyard while the sounds drifted across the city. Every few moments, another burst of applause rose into the night air, followed by laughter and excited voices. Athens loved competition, not merely enjoyed it, loved it. Competition appeared everywhere: in workshops, in politics, in education, in music, in poetry, in athletics, even casual conversations, sometimes transformed into contests over who could tell the better story or deliver the cleverest argument. Victory carried enormous social value. People remembered winners. They talked about winners. They admired winners. Sometimes they envied them. The next morning, Damon learned the source of the previous night's commotion. A local athletic competition had taken place, attracting participants from several nearby districts. Word spread quickly through the city. Who had won? Who had lost? Who had embarrassed himself? Who might someday compete in larger events? The discussions filled streets and workshops alike. As Damon headed toward his pottery shop, he passed a group of young men enthusiastically recreating portions of a wrestling match. Each claimed to know exactly what the competitors should have done. None of them had actually been participating. This, too, seemed timeless. Spectators have always been experts. By the time Damon reached his workshop, several customers had already arrived. Yet even business conversations eventually drifted toward athletics. One man proudly described his nephew's performance. Another insisted that athletes received far too much attention. A third immediately disagreed. Within minutes, a lively argument had begun. The Greeks rarely needed encouragement to debate. As work continued, Damon found himself thinking about the importance of athletic competition in Greek society. Physical contests were not simply entertainment. They reflected deeper cultural values: strength, discipline, skill, endurance, self-control, public recognition. These qualities carried prestige. A successful athlete could achieve remarkable fame. Victories brought honor not only to individuals, but also to families and cities. The most famous competitions attracted participants from across the Greek world. Travelers journeyed great distances. Crowds gathered. Victors became celebrated figures. Stories of their achievements circulated for years, sometimes for generations. By midday, Damon needed to deliver several completed pottery pieces to a customer near one of the gymnasiums. The route took him through a particularly active section of the city. Training sessions were underway. Young athletes ran beneath the bright sun. Others practiced wrestling. Some worked with javelins. Others trained for foot races. Instructors watched closely. Corrections came constantly. Again, again, again. The same movement, repeated countless times. Improvement required effort. The Greeks understood this well. Natural talent helped. Discipline mattered more. Damon paused briefly near a training area. Several boys were learning wrestling techniques. One fell repeatedly. Each time he stood and tried again. His instructor showed little sympathy. Ancient education often emphasized toughness. Perseverance was expected. Complaining rarely earned admiration. The lesson extended beyond athletics. Life itself demanded endurance. Nearby, older athletes prepared for competition. Their bodies reflected years of training. Yet success came at a cost. Injuries were common. Bruises, broken bones, strained muscles. Many athletes carried visible evidence of past contests. Glory often left marks. As Damon continued walking, he encountered another example of Greek competitiveness, a musical contest. Several performers had gathered in a public space. Citizens listened while judges evaluated performances. Musicians competed. Poets competed. Singers competed. Almost any skill could become the basis for public competition. The desire to measure excellence seemed woven into Greek culture itself. One performer completed a song. Applause followed. The next performer immediately attempted to surpass him. The audience compared every detail: technique, expression, creativity. No aspect escaped scrutiny. Even artistic achievement became a contest. The same pattern appeared in intellectual life. Philosophers challenged one another. Teachers competed for students. Orators competed for influence. Political leaders competed for support. Athens often felt like a city-sized tournament. As afternoon approached, Damon completed his delivery and began returning home. Along the way, he noticed preparations for another public event. Workers erected temporary seating. Officials organized spaces. Vendors anticipated large crowds. Clearly, something important was approaching. A passerby explained the city would soon host dramatic performances. The theater, another Greek obsession. Today, many people think of theater as entertainment. For Greeks, it was much more. Drama occupied a central position within civic life. Entire communities attended performances. Major festivals included theatrical competitions. Playwrights competed against one another. Actors sought recognition. Audiences judged everything. Success could bring lasting fame. Failure could bring public embarrassment. Theater represented another arena where excellence and reputation mattered. As Damon walked, memories surfaced from performances he had attended over the years. Some plays made audiences laugh. Others left crowds silent with emotion. Stories explored war, justice, family conflict, pride, revenge, love, human weakness, divine power. The themes felt timeless because human nature changed so little. Different clothing, different technology, different customs, yet many hopes and fears remained familiar. Later that afternoon, Damon finally returned to his workshop. Business remained steady. Customers arrived. Orders accumulated. Work continued. The ordinary rhythm of life persisted despite all the competitions and celebrations. Most people spent far more time earning a living than seeking glory. This reality often disappears beneath famous historical stories. The majority of Greeks were not athletes, not philosophers, not political leaders. They were farmers, craftsmen, merchants, laborers, people focused primarily upon feeding families and meeting responsibilities. Even so, public events offered temporary escape from routine, opportunities to witness something larger, something exciting, something memorable. As evening approached, one of Damon's customers shared troubling news. A merchant vessel had been delayed. Its cargo had not arrived. Several traders worried about shortages. Such concerns immediately captured attention. Ancient Greece depended heavily upon trade. Ships carried grain, wine, olive oil, metals, luxury goods, raw materials. Without these networks, many cities would struggle. The sea connected the Greek world, yet the sea also brought danger. Storms, pirates, navigation errors, accidents. Every voyage involved uncertainty. A delayed shipment could affect prices throughout an entire market. The discussion reminded Damon how vulnerable daily life could be. Modern people often take supply systems for granted. Ancient communities could not. A single failed harvest, a storm, a military conflict, a disrupted trade route. Any of these could create serious problems. As darkness settled across Athens, Damon closed his workshop and headed home. The streets remained lively. Neighbors talked outside doorways. Children reluctantly ended games. Merchants completed final transactions. Oil lamps flickered behind windows. The city slowly prepared for sleep. Yet one feature of Greek life remained active even after sunset. Storytelling. Everywhere people shared stories. Family stories, travel stories, heroic stories, ridiculous stories. Stories explained the world, preserved memories, taught lessons, created entertainment, connected generations. That evening, Damon sat with relatives, while an older family member recounted events from decades earlier. Some details were undoubtedly exaggerated. No one seemed concerned. A good story mattered more than perfect accuracy. Laughter followed. Questions followed. Additional stories followed. The night passed pleasantly. Looking around, Damon realized something important. The famous monuments, the political debates, the athletic competitions, the religious ceremonies, all of them mattered. Yet the true foundation of daily life often rested in smaller moments. Shared meals, family conversations, friendships, work, community. These ordinary experiences connected ancient people to one another, just as they do today. Eventually, the gathering ended. One by one, family members retired for the night. The city grew quieter. The stars emerged overhead. Damon prepared for sleep. Another ordinary day had passed. Yet tomorrow promised something different. something many Athenians simultaneously feared and respected, a place where reputations could be destroyed, fortunes could chain, friendships could end, and ordinary citizens could find themselves standing before hundreds of fellow Athenians, defending their actions with nothing but words. Tomorrow, Damon would enter the fascinating and often intimidating world of the Athenian courts. The following morning began with an unexpected knock at Damon's door. The sun had only recently risen above the rooftops of Athens. Most of the neighborhood was still easing into the day. Smoke drifted upward from cooking fires. Merchants prepared carts. Children carried out small chores before lessons or work. Damon opened the door and found a neighbor waiting. The man's expression suggested frustration. That alone was not unusual. Life regularly provided reasons for frustration. What caught Damon's attention was the small bundle of documents tucked beneath the man's arm. Immediately, Damon suspected the conversation would involve the courts. He was correct. A property dispute had emerged between two relatives. Neither side trusted the other. Both believed themselves completely right. Both were prepared to prove it before a jury. Neither seemed interested in compromise. Again, this was not unusual. Athens possessed many admirable qualities. A talent for avoiding arguments was not among them. The neighbor spent several minutes explaining the disagreement. A boundary marker, a piece of inherited land, conflicting memories, missing witnesses. The details grew increasingly complicated. By the end of the explanation, Damon understood why the dispute was heading toward court. No one seemed entirely certain who was correct, yet everyone involved felt absolutely certain. Such contradictions appeared frequently in legal matters. After the neighbor departed, Damon headed toward his workshop. Along the way, he passed groups already discussing various legal disputes. One merchant complained about a contract. Another worried about accusations regarding unpaid debts. A third discussed testimony he would soon provide. The courts occupied a surprisingly large portion of Athenian life. Modern people often imagine ancient citizens spending most of their time discussing philosophy. Many probably spent more time discussing lawsuits. Athens developed a reputation for legal activity. Citizens sued one another frequently, sometimes for important reasons, sometimes for reasons that appeared remarkably trivial. Legal disputes became a normal feature of daily existence. The system itself contributed to this culture. Unlike modern courts, with professional judges controlling every aspect of proceedings, Athens relied heavily upon citizen participation. Large juries often decided cases. Ordinary citizens listened to arguments, examined evidence, cast votes. The process reflected democratic ideals. It also created opportunities for drama. Lots of drama. By mid-morning, Damon needed to deliver pottery near one of the court complexes. The timing allowed him to observe proceedings. Crowds gathered outside. Some participants appeared confident. Others looked nervous. Witnesses arrived. Supporters arrived. Curious spectators arrived. Legal cases attracted attention, much like public performances. People enjoyed following significant disputes, especially when prominent individuals were involved. The atmosphere reminded Damon of a marketplace. Conversations filled the air. Predictions circulated. Rumors multiplied. Opinions formed long before any verdict appeared. Human beings have always enjoyed speculation. A man standing nearby claimed to know the likely outcome of a particular case. Another insisted he was completely wrong. A third confidently disagreed with both. No actual verdict had been delivered, yet everyone already possessed strong opinions. Inside, one case had already begun, although Damon could not enter immediately. Details soon emerged through conversations among those exiting. A business disagreement, accusations regarding a partnership, claims and counterclaims, evidence and witnesses. Nothing extraordinary, yet the intensity of the arguments fascinated observers. Reputations mattered greatly. People fought hard to defend them. In Athens, public image carried enormous value. A respected reputation could open doors. A damaged reputation could create obstacles. Many court battles involved more than money. They involved honor. Honor occupied a central position in Greek society. Modern people often underestimate its importance. Greeks cared deeply about how others viewed them. Respect, recognition, status, public standing, these concerns shaped countless decisions. A legal defeat could damage all of them. By midday, Damon encountered an acquaintance named Philon. Philon had recently served on a jury. The experience remained fresh in his mind. He eagerly described it. Hundreds of citizens had participated. Arguments lasted for hours. Speakers presented evidence. Witnesses testified. Emotions occasionally erupted. Then the jurors voted. The entire process moved surprisingly quickly compared with many modern legal systems. Athenians valued efficiency. Cases often concluded within a single day. There were advantages. There were disadvantages. But delays lasting months or years remained uncommon. As Philon spoke, another interesting reality emerged. Professional lawyers, as modern people understand them, did not dominate proceedings. Citizens frequently spoke for themselves. This created challenges. Not everyone possessed equal speaking ability. A persuasive individual enjoyed significant advantages. Words mattered. Delivery mattered. Confidence mattered. Public speaking could determine outcomes. This reality encouraged extensive preparation. People practiced speeches, memorized arguments, sought advice, prepared carefully. A courtroom often became a stage. Success depended partly upon performance. As the afternoon progressed, Damon returned to work. Yet thoughts of the courts lingered. Athens expected ordinary citizens to participate in many public responsibilities: politics, military service, jury duty, religious ceremonies, community obligations. Citizenship involved active involvement. The system demanded time and attention. In return, citizens gained influence over public affairs. The arrangement fascinated visitors from other societies. Not everyone admired it. Many respected it. Few ignored it. Later in the day, another customer arrived carrying fresh legal gossip. An influential citizen had recently lost a major case. The verdict surprised many observers. Discussion spread rapidly. Some praised the decision. Others condemned it. Everyone seemed eager to express an opinion. The story moved through Athens almost as quickly as a modern headline. Without newspapers, without radios, without telephones, only conversation. Thousands of conversations. The city functioned as its own communication network. By late afternoon, the workshop quieted. Customers became less frequent. The day's heat softened. Outside, shadows lengthened. Damon stepped into the street for fresh air. Nearby, several boys argued about a game. Each insisted the other had violated the rules. The disagreement intensified. Soon both threatened to seek adult judgment. Damon smiled. The future generation of Athenian litigants appeared healthy and active. Some habits began early. As evening approached, he completed final tasks and prepared to close. Another ordinary day neared its end. Yet while walking home, Damon noticed unusual activity near a public notice board. A crowd had gathered. People read announcements carefully. Others discussed them. Several pointed excitedly toward particular sections. Curious, Damon moved closer. The notices concerned upcoming military matters, training schedules, administrative announcements, preparations affecting citizen soldiers. Athens might be famous for philosophy and democracy, yet military responsibilities remained a permanent reality. Most citizens understood that if circumstances demanded it, they could be called upon to serve. The possibility lingered constantly in the background. Wars appeared frequently throughout Greek history. Conflicts between city-states, conflicts with foreign powers, conflicts over territory, trade, prestige, security. Peace rarely lasted forever. As Damon studied the notices, he realized many younger men nearby were doing the same. Some appeared excited. Others looked uneasy. Military service carried honor. It also carried danger. The two often traveled together. Night eventually settled over the city. Families gathered indoors. Meals were shared. Stories exchanged. The familiar rhythm continued. Yet conversation throughout Athens increasingly focused upon military matters, training, weapons, campaigns, defense. The subjects appeared everywhere. Something was changing, perhaps not immediately, perhaps not dramatically, but enough to capture public attention. As Damon prepared for sleep, he found himself reflecting on a simple truth. Athenian life often appeared comfortable and familiar. Work, family, markets, festivals, friendships. Yet beneath these routines existed a constant awareness that ordinary citizens might someday be asked to defend their city. Tomorrow would reveal more about that responsibility, because one of the strangest aspects of ancient Greek daily life was that a potter, farmer, merchant, or craftsman could suddenly become a soldier when the city called. The next morning, Damon awoke before sunrise. The city remained quiet, but not entirely silent. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster announced the coming day. A dog barked. A cart rattled over uneven stones. The familiar sounds of Athens slowly emerged from the darkness. Yet today felt different. The military notices, posted the previous evening, remained fresh in everyone's mind. Even during peaceful periods, Athenians rarely forgot the possibility of war. Unlike many modern citizens who might spend years without thinking about military service, Greek men lived with the constant understanding that they could someday be called upon to defend their city. For Damon, this reality was neither exciting nor terrifying. It was simply part of life, as ordinary as taxes, as ordinary as jury duty, as ordinary as attending religious festivals. After breakfast, he headed toward his workshop. Along the way, he passed a group of younger men gathered in an open area. Several carried shields, others carried practice spears. An older veteran supervised their training. Instructions echoed through the morning air. Movements were repeated, mistakes corrected. The exercises looked exhausting. Sweat appeared quickly despite the cool morning temperature. The scene reminded Damon of his own younger years. Military preparation had occupied a significant place in his life as well. Nearly every citizen shared similar experiences. Athens expected its men to serve when necessary. The exact nature of service varied depending upon wealth, age, and circumstances. Some fought as heavily armed infantry. Others served in support roles. The wealthy might provide horses. The poor contributed in different ways. But responsibility touched nearly everyone. The Greek world often appeared fragmented. Dozens of city-states, countless rivalries, frequent disputes. Yet one thing united many communities. War occurred often, far more often than most people would have preferred. As Damon continued walking, he encountered an elderly veteran named Menon. The old man frequently shared stories from earlier campaigns. Some listeners suspected he exaggerated. Menon denied this completely. his listeners remained unconvinced. Today, however, the veteran seemed unusually thoughtful. When Damon greeted him, Menon spoke about a campaign from decades earlier. Not the victories, not the glory, the waiting, the boredom, the uncertainty. These details rarely appeared in heroic stories. Popular tales celebrated dramatic battles. Real military life often involved long periods of discomfort. Marching, waiting, camping, more waiting. Ancient warfare contained far fewer cinematic moments than later storytellers suggested. Damon listened carefully. The veteran's observations reflected a truth many soldiers understood. War was often less exciting than people imagined, and far more exhausting. After reaching his workshop, Damon settled into his daily routine. The pottery wheel turned. Clay responded beneath practiced hands. Customers arrived. Orders accumulated. Life continued. This normality itself felt important. Most citizens spent the overwhelming majority of their lives working rather than fighting. Even during eras remembered for wars, ordinary routines persisted. People still baked bread, raised children, bought supplies, argued with neighbors, paid debts. Life moved forward, yet military concerns occasionally interrupted everything. Near midday, a customer arrived carrying equipment that immediately attracted attention. A shield, not a decorative item, a real shield, used, scratched, clearly carried through previous campaigns. The customer planned to have a damaged storage container replaced. While waiting, he noticed several people examining the shield. Questions quickly followed. Where had he served? What battles had he witnessed? Had he faced Spartans, pirates, foreign armies? The questions came rapidly. Military experience carried social interest. People wanted stories. The man provided a few, not grand heroic tales, simple memories, cold nights, long marches, poor food, heavy equipment. His account sounded surprisingly ordinary. Perhaps that made it more believable. Ancient soldiers carried significant burdens. Armor could be heavy. Weapons required maintenance. Travel proved exhausting. Campaigns disrupted normal life. Yet service remained a duty many citizens accepted. As the afternoon progressed, Damon left briefly to deliver pottery near a training ground outside the busiest sections of the city. The location provided a clearer view of military preparations. Groups practiced formations. Commands echoed. Shields moved together. Spears aligned. The exercises emphasized cooperation. Greek warfare depended heavily upon coordinated action. Individual bravery mattered. Discipline mattered more. A soldier who abandoned formation endangered everyone nearby. Success required trust. Each man depended upon those standing beside him. The lesson extended beyond military life. Greek society valued community responsibilities. Citizens relied upon one another in politics, religion, commerce, and warfare. Watching the training, Damon noticed several boys observing from a distance. Their eyes followed every movement. For them, the soldiers represented adulthood, responsibility, possibly adventure. Children often admired military achievement. Adults usually understood its costs more clearly. Nearby stood several older men discussing previous conflicts. Their conversation revealed another reality. Wars shaped memories. Entire generations remembered certain battles, certain victories, certain defeats. Shared experiences became part of community identity. Stories passed from parents to children, children to grandchildren. History lived through memory long before it appeared in books. As Damon completed his delivery, a trumpet sounded across the training ground. Exercises paused. Instructions followed. Groups reorganized. Everything appeared carefully structured. Organization mattered. Without it, military operations quickly descended into chaos. The Greeks understood this well. Returning toward Athens, Damon encountered a merchant caravan entering the city. The sight highlighted another connection between warfare and daily life. Trade depended upon security. Peaceful roads encouraged commerce. Dangerous roads discouraged it. Merchants paid close attention to political conditions. Conflicts could disrupt entire business networks. A war fought far away might still affect prices in local markets. Citizens understood these connections. Military affairs were not separate from economic life. The two influenced each other constantly. Back in the marketplace, conversations reflected this reality. Some merchants discussed grain supplies. Others worried about shipping routes. Several debated political developments. Everyone possessed opinions. Not all opinions agreed. This was Athens. Agreement remained rare. Debate remained abundant. By late afternoon, Damon returned home briefly before completing several household errands. The neighborhood bustled with familiar activity. Women carried water. Children played games. Neighbors exchanged news. An elderly man repaired tools. Nothing about the scene suggested military concerns. Yet those concerns remained present beneath the surface, like a distant storm visible on the horizon. Not immediate, not necessarily dangerous, but impossible to ignore completely. As evening approached, Damon joined several friends for a meal. The conversation wandered through many topics: business, family, politics, religion. Eventually, military matters emerged once again. One friend expressed pride regarding citizen service. Another worried about future conflicts. A third insisted politicians exaggerated threats. The discussion continued for nearly an hour. No final conclusion appeared. Most conversations rarely produced one. The value often existed in the discussion itself. Night gradually settled over Athens. Oil lamps illuminated homes. The streets grew quieter. Families withdrew indoors. The city prepared for rest. Damon stepped outside briefly before sleep. Above him stretched an astonishing sky. Thousands of stars filled the darkness. The familiar constellations watched silently over the city. Many Greeks believed the heavens reflected divine order. Others simply admired their beauty. Either way, the night sky commanded attention. Standing there, Damon reflected on how strange Greek life could be. A citizen might spend the morning shaping clay, the afternoon discussing politics, the evening attending religious ceremonies, the next day training for war. Different responsibilities overlapped constantly. Modern categories often failed to capture ancient realities. Life was interconnected. Politics touched religion. Religion touched warfare. Warfare touched trade. Trade touched family life. Everything influenced everything else. As he finally prepared for sleep, a distant sound carried through the darkness. Music, not festival music, not military music, something theatrical, a performance, a rehearsal, perhaps preparations for one of the dramatic competitions that would soon arrive. Damon smiled. Athens never remained focused on one thing for long. Tomorrow, attention would shift again, away from soldiers, away from politics, toward one of the most beloved forms of entertainment in the entire Greek world, the theater. And there, among masks, actors, laughter, tragedy, and enormous crowds, Damon would witness another fascinating chapter in the strange daily life of ancient Greeks. The next morning, Athens seemed unusually energetic. Before Damon even reached the main streets, he could hear people discussing the upcoming performances. Neighbors exchanged predictions. Merchants speculated about attendance. Young men debated which playwright might receive the greatest applause. The theater dominated conversation. For a visitor arriving from another land, the excitement might have seemed excessive. After all, these were merely plays. At least that is how many modern people would view them. To the Greeks, however, dramatic performances represented something far larger. Theater was entertainment. It was education. It was politics. It was religion. It was social commentary. It was civic pride. Entire communities participated in the experience. The city seemed to vibrate with anticipation. After completing a few morning tasks, Damon joined the crowds, moving toward the theater district. People flowed through the streets in steady streams. Families, citizens, visitors from neighboring communities, vendors carrying food, officials overseeing preparations. Everyone appeared headed in the same direction. As Damon approached the theater, the scale of the gathering became apparent. Hundreds of people were already arriving. Soon there would be thousands. The theater itself occupied a hillside. Rows upon rows of stone seating curved around a large performance area below. The design allowed enormous audiences to watch simultaneously. Even before the performance began, the sight impressed visitors. The Greeks excelled at creating spaces where large groups could gather. Assemblies, markets, gymnasiums, theaters, public life thrived within such places. Finding a seat required patience. People settled beside friends and relatives. Conversations continued. Predictions multiplied. Some audience members had attended countless performances. Others were experiencing the theater for the first time. Children looked around with excitement. Older citizens exchanged memories of famous productions from years past. At last, the performance began. The crowd gradually quieted. Not completely. A gathering of thousands never becomes entirely silent, but attention focused upon the stage. Actors emerged wearing costumes and masks. The masks fascinated many foreign visitors. Large and expressive, they allowed performers to portray different characters. From a distance, facial expressions would otherwise be difficult to see. The masks solved the problem. They also created a distinctive visual style, unlike anything common today. The story unfolded slowly. Characters spoke. Conflicts emerged. The audience listened carefully. What surprised many outsiders was the seriousness of Greek theater. These productions often addressed profound themes: justice, fate, pride, family loyalty, war, power, human weakness. The stories entertained, while also encouraging reflection. People discussed them afterward, sometimes for days, sometimes for years. A particularly successful play could become part of public memory. As the performance continued, Damon observed the audience. Their reactions fascinated him almost as much as the play itself. Some laughed, others nodded thoughtfully. A few became visibly emotional. The Greeks did not attend theater merely to pass time. They engaged with it intensely. Stories mattered. Ideas mattered. Questions mattered. Near Damon sat an elderly man who occasionally whispered commentary to companions. His opinions appeared strong. Whether anyone requested them remained uncertain. Some audience members appreciated his observations. Others clearly wished he would remain quiet. Certain aspects of public gatherings never change. Hours passed. The play reached its climax. Tension filled the theater. Then came the resolution. The audience responded with applause. Discussion immediately erupted. People analyzed characters, debated decisions, praised performances, criticized weaknesses. The experience continued long after the final scene. Between performances, spectators stretched, ate, and socialized. The theater became a giant meeting place. Business contacts were renewed. Friendships strengthened. News exchanged. Political rumors spread. One could learn a great deal simply by listening. Damon encountered several acquaintances. Each possessed different opinions regarding the performance. One declared it brilliant, another found it disappointing, a third insisted audiences had become too difficult to satisfy. The disagreement seemed perfectly appropriate. Athenians could debate almost anything. Soon another production began. This one differed dramatically from the first. Instead of tragedy, the audience received comedy. The atmosphere changed immediately. Laughter replaced solemn reflection. Jokes flew rapidly. Some targeted public figures. Others mocked social habits. Many relied upon references familiar to local audiences. Comedy often functioned as a mirror. It reflected society's absurdities, its hypocrisies, its weaknesses. People laughed at others. Sometimes they laughed at themselves. The Greeks enjoyed both. Certain jokes produced roaring reactions. Others received only mild amusement. Not every attempt succeeded. Ancient comedians understood the risks of performance. Thousands of spectators could be a difficult audience, yet success brought tremendous rewards. A well-received comedian might achieve significant popularity. Public recognition mattered greatly in Greek culture. Throughout the afternoon, Damon observed how theater united diverse groups. Wealthy citizens sat near craftsmen. Farmers sat near merchants. Veterans sat near students. Differences remained, yet everyone shared the same stories, the same laughter, the same emotional moments. The theater created common experiences. In a society filled with debate and disagreement, such experiences possessed value. As daylight slowly faded, the final performance concluded. Spectators began leaving. Conversations filled the surrounding streets. The city seemed transformed into one enormous discussion. People replayed favorite scenes, quoted memorable lines, argued about interpretations. The plays continued, living through conversation. Walking home, Damon reflected upon the remarkable role theater played within Greek life. Many societies entertained themselves through stories. The Greeks elevated storytelling into a major civic institution. Entire festivals centered around dramatic competitions. Playwrights became celebrated figures. Audiences treated performances seriously. The result was something unique. Art became part of public life, rather than existing only on its margins. Along the route home, Damon passed several young boys reenacting scenes from one of the comedies. Their exaggerated performances generated laughter from passers-by. Clearly, the theater's influence had already begun spreading. Nearby, a merchant attempted to attract customers by quoting jokes from the play. Business and entertainment blended effortlessly. Athens possessed a talent for turning everything into conversation. By the time Damon reached home, twilight covered the city. Lamps flickered behind windows. Cooking aromas drifted through the neighborhood. Families gathered for evening meals. The familiar rhythm returned. Yet the excitement of the theater lingered. During dinner, Damon's children eagerly asked questions about the performances. He described the costumes, the masks, the stories, the crowd. Their fascination reminded him of something important. The Greeks treasured shared cultural experiences, myths, festivals, competitions, plays. These events connected generations. Parents and children could discuss the same stories. Citizens from different backgrounds could share common references. Such connections helped hold society together. Later that evening, a neighbor stopped by unexpectedly. He carried news from the harbor. Several ships had recently arrived. Foreign merchants accompanied them. Exotic goods filled their cargo holds. New stories traveled with them. New ideas, new customs, new rumors. Athens had always looked outward toward the wider world. The sea connected it to countless distant places. Tomorrow, Damon planned to visit the harbor himself. There he would encounter one of the most fascinating aspects of Greek daily life: the constant arrival of foreign influences, different languages, different cultures, different beliefs. Because despite popular images of isolated city-states, the Greek world was deeply connected to lands far beyond its shores. And at the busy harbor, where ships arrived from every direction, Damon would discover just how large his world truly was. The following morning dawned clear and bright. A gentle breeze drifted inland from the sea, carrying with it the faint scent of salt water. Even before Damon left his neighborhood, he could sense the harbor's presence. The air felt different. The city felt different. Athens owed much of its prosperity to the sea. Without ships, many of its markets would stand half empty. Without maritime trade, valuable resources would become scarce. Without connections to distant ports, the city would lose much of the wealth and influence that helped sustain its daily life. Today, Damon intended to see the harbor for himself. After completing a few necessary tasks at home, he set out toward the coast. The journey took time. Athens itself sat some distance inland, while the great port of Piraeus served as its maritime gateway. Roads connecting the city and harbor bustled constantly with activity. Merchants moved goods. Travelers arrived. Messengers carried information. Animals pulled heavy loads. The route never remained quiet for long. As Damon approached Piraeus, the scale of activity became increasingly apparent. The harbor seemed alive. Ships filled the water. Large vessels, small vessels, fishing boats, merchant ships, military ships. Everywhere men shouted instructions. Cargo shifted. Ropes creaked. Wooden hulls bumped gently against docks. The entire area pulsed with motion. For many visitors, the harbor represented the most cosmopolitan place they had ever seen. People from distant lands mingled together. Different accents filled the air. Different clothing styles appeared around every corner. Different customs became visible. A person could stand near the docks for an hour and encounter more diversity than some villagers experienced in an entire lifetime. Damon paused to watch laborers unloading a merchant vessel. The process demanded coordination. Amphorae filled with wine, jars of olive oil, bundles of textiles, crates containing luxury goods. Everything had to be moved carefully. A single accident could destroy valuable cargo. The workers moved efficiently. Years of experience guided their actions. Nearby, merchants examined goods as they arrived. Questions followed immediately. Quality, quantity, origin, price, every detail mattered. Successful trade depended upon information. A merchant who knew more often earned more. One trader proudly displayed fine fabrics acquired from distant regions. The colors attracted attention instantly. Rich reds, deep blues, shades difficult and expensive to produce. Such items appealed primarily to wealthier customers, yet even ordinary citizens enjoyed seeing them. Exotic goods carried a certain fascination. They hinted at distant worlds, worlds most people would never personally visit. As Damon continued exploring the harbor, he encountered a merchant from a foreign land. The man's Greek carried a noticeable accent, yet communication proved easy enough. Trade encouraged language skills. Merchants learned whatever helped business. The two exchanged greetings. Soon conversation turned toward travel. The merchant described recent voyages, storms encountered, ports visited, profits earned, difficulties endured. His stories captured the attention of everyone nearby. Travelers often became temporary celebrities. They brought information unavailable elsewhere. News traveled through people, through memory, through storytelling. Every traveler served as a living source of information. Damon listened carefully. The merchant described cities larger than many Athenians could imagine. Massive markets, strange customs, unfamiliar foods, different forms of government. The descriptions fascinated listeners. Some reacted with amazement, others with skepticism. Foreign stories often inspired both. Not every tale proved entirely accurate, yet even exaggerated accounts expanded people's sense of the wider world. The Mediterranean connected countless communities. Greeks did not live in isolation. They interacted constantly with neighboring cultures. Goods moved, ideas moved, technologies moved, people moved. The sea served as a highway linking distant societies. Nearby stood a group of sailors repairing equipment. Their weathered appearance revealed years spent at sea. Life aboard ships could be difficult. Storms threatened constantly. Navigation required skill. Food sometimes became monotonous. Living conditions often felt cramped. Yet sailors enjoyed opportunities unavailable to most citizens. They saw distant places, experienced foreign cultures, witnessed events beyond local horizons. The trade-off appealed to some, not to others. Damon suspected he preferred dry land. As midday approached, activity intensified. More ships arrived. More goods changed hands. More negotiations occurred. Every section of the harbor seemed occupied. The sheer volume of commerce impressed him. It demonstrated how many people contributed to the functioning of society. Farmers produced food. Craftsmen created goods. Sailors transported cargo. Merchants organized trade. Laborers moved materials. Countless roles interconnected. No city succeeded entirely alone. During a break, Damon purchased a simple meal from a vendor. Bread, fish, olives, familiar foods in a very busy setting. Sitting near the waterfront, he observed the constant movement around him. The harbor never truly rested. Even when one task finished, another began immediately. Nearby, officials monitored certain activities. Taxes and regulations formed part of trade. Governments rarely ignored opportunities to collect revenue. Merchants understood this reality well. Complaints occurred frequently, yet business continued regardless. Economic life often involved navigating official requirements. Some aspects of commerce change remarkably little. After eating, Damon wandered toward another section of the harbor where foreign visitors gathered. The atmosphere differed noticeably. Different languages blended together. Interpreters assisted conversations. Traders compared samples of merchandise. Agreements emerged through careful negotiation. Cultural differences occasionally created confusion, yet mutual profit encouraged cooperation. Money frequently succeeds where diplomacy struggles. One visitor displayed unusual pottery from a distant region. Damon examined it with professional interest. The craftsmanship differed from local styles. Decorative patterns varied. Shapes reflected different traditions. The comparison reminded him that even ordinary objects reveal cultural influences. People express values through the things they create. Every society leaves clues in its artifacts. As afternoon progressed, the harbor continued offering surprises. Damon observed musicians performing for travelers. Religious shrines visited by sailors seeking protection. Labor disputes among workers. Business celebrations following successful agreements. The harbor contained nearly every aspect of human life, compressed into a single location. Hope, ambition, frustration, opportunity, risk, success, failure, all appeared within a few hundred steps. Eventually, Damon encountered an elderly ship captain. The man had spent decades at sea. His stories stretched across half the known world, at least according to him. Whether every detail was true remained uncertain, yet his experiences clearly impressed listeners. The captain spoke about storms powerful enough to destroy fleets, foreign rulers, strange animals, unexpected dangers, remarkable sights. The audience listened eagerly. Humans have always loved travel stories, especially when told by skilled storytellers. As shadows lengthened across the harbor, merchants began securing goods. Sailors prepared vessels. Workers completed final tasks. Activity gradually slowed. Not stopped, merely slowed. Tomorrow everything would begin again. Another cycle of arrivals and departures. Another cycle of buying and selling. Another cycle of news and rumors crossing the sea. Damon started the journey back toward Athens. The road remained busy. Travelers moved in both directions, some entering the city, others leaving it. The flow never completely ceased. Along the way, he reflected upon how interconnected the Greek world truly was. Many Athenians spent most of their lives close to home, yet through trade, foreign visitors, and maritime connections, distant lands influenced daily life constantly. A person could eat imported food, use imported materials, hear foreign stories, adopt foreign ideas, without ever leaving home. By the time Damon reached Athens, evening had arrived. The city glowed softly beneath hundreds of oil lamps. Familiar sounds welcomed him back. Neighbors talking, children laughing, animals settling for the night. The ordinary rhythm felt comforting after a day among crowds and ships. Yet another aspect of Greek life awaited exploration. Tomorrow Damon planned to visit one of the city's most respected teachers, not because he intended to become a philosopher, but because education occupied a surprisingly important place in Greek society. And there, among students, instructors, and endless questions, he would discover why the Greeks became famous for their relentless curiosity about the world around them. The next morning arrived quietly. After his busy day at the harbor, Damon welcomed a slower start. Sunlight crept gradually into the courtyard of his home. Birds moved between rooftops. Somewhere nearby, a baker had already begun preparing the day's bread. Athens seemed calm, at least for the moment. Experience had taught Damon that calm rarely lasted long in a city filled with merchants, politicians, craftsmen, philosophers, and citizens who loved expressing opinions. Today, however, his destination lay far from the noise of the harbor. He intended to visit a respected teacher whose lessons had attracted considerable attention, not because Damon planned to become a student himself. His days remained occupied by pottery, family responsibilities, and civic obligations. But curiosity was a powerful force in Athens, and curiosity often led people toward teachers. The Greeks possessed an unusual reputation among neighboring cultures. They asked questions, lots of questions, questions about nature, questions about politics, questions about the gods, questions about justice, questions about happiness, questions about nearly everything. Not every Greek enjoyed philosophy. Not every Greek studied formally. Yet curiosity itself occupied an important place within the culture. As Damon walked through the city, he noticed students already gathering in small groups. Some carried writing tablets, others simply listened. Many discussions had clearly begun before sunrise. A few boys practiced, reciting passages from memory. One stumbled repeatedly. His companions corrected him, not always gently. Education could be demanding. The teacher Damon planned to visit conducted lessons in a shaded area near a public building. When Damon arrived, several students had already assembled. They ranged widely in age. Some appeared barely old enough to grow a proper beard. Others were mature men seeking knowledge later in life. Learning did not always belong exclusively to the young. The teacher himself sat calmly beneath a tree. He wore simple clothing. Nothing about his appearance immediately distinguished him from countless other Athenians. Yet people listened when he spoke. That alone suggested influence. The lesson had already begun. Rather than delivering a lengthy speech, the teacher asked a question. A simple question. What makes a person wise? The students immediately offered answers. Knowledge, experience, good judgment, age, education. The responses varied. The teacher listened patiently. Then he challenged each answer. Why? How? What if the opposite were true? Could wisdom exist without knowledge? Could knowledge exist without wisdom? The discussion continued. Damon watched with fascination. This method differed from what many people expected. The teacher did not simply provide answers. He encouraged students to think, to examine assumptions, to question conclusions. The process sometimes appeared frustrating, yet it forced participants to engage actively. Athens contained many such teachers. Some became famous. Others remained known only within local circles. Together, they contributed to a culture that valued discussion and inquiry. Not everyone admired them. Certain citizens viewed philosophers with suspicion. Too much questioning, critics argued, could create problems. Traditions existed for reasons. Customs existed for reasons. Endless debate sometimes unsettled established beliefs. Yet questioning remained popular, particularly among younger Athenians. As the lesson continued, conversation shifted toward happiness. What did people truly need in order to live well? Wealth, honor, friendship, health. The students offered competing answers. No consensus emerged. Perhaps that was the point. Certain questions resisted simple solutions. Even today, many people continue debating them. The Greeks were often less interested in ending discussions than in exploring them. After some time, the formal lesson concluded. Students lingered. Conversations continued. Small groups formed. Arguments resumed. The learning process extended beyond official instruction. Ideas circulated through informal discussions. A thought introduced in the morning might still be debated at dinner. Damon spoke briefly, with one student. The young man described his educational experiences: reading, writing, music, physical training, public speaking. Different families emphasized different subjects. Wealthier households often provided broader opportunities, yet education remained valued across much of society. At least for boys, opportunities for girls generally remained more limited, though exceptions certainly existed. Greek society largely directed formal education toward males. This reality shaped much of public life. As Damon departed, he reflected upon how unusual certain Greek attitudes seemed. Many cultures preserved traditions carefully. The Greeks often examined traditions. Sometimes they defended them. Sometimes they challenged them. Sometimes they argued about them endlessly. The result produced remarkable intellectual energy. It also produced frequent disagreements. Walking through the city, Damon soon encountered evidence of that fact. Near the marketplace, a crowd had gathered around two speakers, engaged in a heated debate. The topic seemed simple enough: the proper responsibilities of citizens. Yet the discussion had already attracted dozens of listeners. Each speaker argued passionately. Each believed himself correct. The audience reacted enthusiastically. Some applauded, some laughed, others interrupted. The atmosphere resembled theater, almost as much as education. Damon smiled. Athens possessed a unique talent for transforming almost anything into a public debate. Nearby, another group discussed astronomy. A third discussed military strategy. A fourth argued about poetry. Ideas flowed constantly through the city. Information traveled rapidly. Opinions traveled even faster. By midday, Damon reached his workshop. Customers soon arrived. Work resumed. Yet conversations throughout the day repeatedly returned to questions rather than answers. One customer discussed a political issue. Another raised religious concerns. A third asked whether certain stories about distant lands could possibly be true. Everyone seemed curious about something. Curiosity fueled commerce as well. Craftsmen experimented with techniques. Merchants explored opportunities. Sailors sought new routes. Farmers observed weather patterns. Philosophers examined ideas. Different forms of inquiry appeared everywhere. As afternoon progressed, Damon worked alongside an apprentice. The young man asked endless questions about pottery, about business, about customers, about life. At times, the questions became exhausting. Yet Damon recognized something familiar, the same curiosity he had observed earlier among students, the desire to understand, the desire to improve, the desire to know more. Such qualities helped societies grow, even when they occasionally tested patience. Later that afternoon, a traveling storyteller arrived in the neighborhood. A small crowd gathered quickly. Stories remained one of the most important methods of sharing knowledge. Not every lesson came from formal education. People learned through myths, through history, through conversations, through observations, through stories. The storyteller described distant places, foreign customs, ancient heroes. Audience members listened carefully. Children sat closest. Adults stood behind them. Everyone paid attention. Human beings have always loved learning through narrative. Facts become memorable when attached to stories. The Greeks understood this well. As evening approached, Damon completed the day's work and headed home. Along the way, he passed a group of boys practicing speeches. One pretended to address the assembly. Another played the role of an opponent. Their friends served as audience and critics. The exercise seemed playful, yet it prepared them for future responsibilities. Public speaking remained a valuable skill. Citizens expected to participate in civic life. Communication mattered. Persuasion mattered. Confidence mattered. Even ordinary people benefited from developing these abilities. Back at home, dinner conversations continued many of the themes Damon had encountered throughout the day. Questions, ideas, possibilities. His children asked about the teacher, about the students, about the discussions. Damon answered as best he could. Soon the children began asking their own questions. One question led to another, then another. Eventually, even Damon laughed. Perhaps curiosity truly was contagious. Night settled gradually over Athens. Lamps flickered, voices softened. The city prepared for rest. Yet Damon found himself reflecting upon something he had observed. The Greeks were not merely interested in knowing things. They seemed fascinated by the process of discovering things. The journey mattered almost as much as the destination. The question mattered almost as much as the answer. This habit shaped countless aspects of their society. It influenced politics, education, science, philosophy, daily conversation, even ordinary life. As Damon prepared for sleep, he considered how strange and remarkable that was. Tomorrow would bring another glimpse into Greek daily existence, a glimpse involving one of humanity's oldest concerns, money, because whether discussing philosophy, politics, religion, or warfare, Athenians eventually found themselves confronting the same practical reality. Someone always had to pay for everything, and the world of Greek business, banking, debt, and wealth proved every bit as fascinating as the world of ideas. The following morning, Damon awoke thinking about money, not because he particularly enjoyed thinking about it. Few people did, yet money had a way of demanding attention. A cracked roof required money. A new tool required money. A daughter's future marriage might require money. Taxes required money. Unexpected problems almost always required money. The ancient Greeks were no different. No matter how much philosophers discussed virtue, happiness, or wisdom. Ordinary citizens still needed to earn a living, and so, like countless Athenians before him, Damon began another day concerned with practical matters. The pottery workshop awaited. Customers awaited. Bills awaited. Life continued. As he stepped into the street, he encountered a merchant already engaged in a heated conversation with a supplier. The subject seemed familiar. Payment, one believed a price, had been agreed upon. The other remembered the agreement differently. Voices rose. Hands waved. Several bystanders paused to watch. Business disagreements attracted attention almost as reliably as theatrical performances. Damon continued walking, yet the scene reminded him of an important reality. Ancient Greece possessed markets, merchants, investments, loans, contracts, and financial risks. The economy may have looked different from the modern world, but many underlying concerns remained surprisingly recognizable. By the time Damon reached the marketplace, commerce was already in full motion. Merchants arranged goods. Customers negotiated prices. Laborers moved cargo. Officials observed activity. Every corner seemed occupied. The marketplace functioned like the heart of the city. Goods flowed through it. Information flowed through it. Money flowed through it. Without the marketplace, much of urban life would grind to a halt. Damon stopped briefly at a stall selling imported goods. The merchant proudly displayed items from distant regions: fine fabrics, decorative objects, rare spices. Such products attracted attention because they were unusual. Their rarity increased their value. Wealthy customers often purchased them to demonstrate status. Throughout Greek society, wealth could be displayed in many ways: better clothing, larger homes, more slaves, expensive imports, public donations. Social standing often reflected economic standing. Yet wealth in Athens existed in many forms. Some people owned land. Others owned workshops. Some earned fortunes through trade. Others inherited family resources. Economic success rarely followed a single path. As Damon continued through the market, he encountered a money changer seated behind a table. Small piles of coins lay neatly arranged. Customers approached regularly. Different city-states issued different coinage. Traders needed assistance converting values. Money changers performed this service. They also sometimes provided loans. In a sense, they served functions somewhat similar to later bankers. The Greeks did not possess modern banks exactly as we know them, yet financial services certainly existed. Lending, borrowing, deposits, investments. Economic life demanded such tools. Damon watched a transaction unfold. A merchant exchanged coins acquired during foreign trade. Careful calculations followed. Values compared. Weights examined. Accuracy mattered. Trust mattered even more. A reputation for honesty could become a merchant's greatest asset. A reputation for dishonesty could destroy opportunities. News traveled quickly. People remembered. By midday, Damon arrived at his workshop and resumed work. The pottery wheel spun steadily. Clay shaped itself beneath practiced hands. Customers arrived throughout the day. Some paid immediately. Others requested credit. Credit formed another important aspect of economic life. Not every transaction involved immediate payment. People borrowed, promised future payment, entered agreements. Most arrangements worked smoothly. Some did not. Failed debts created tension. Sometimes lawsuits. Sometimes ruined relationships. Money possessed a remarkable ability to test friendships. During the afternoon, one customer described financial difficulties caused by a poor harvest. Agriculture remained vulnerable. Weather influenced everything. Too much rain, too little rain, unexpected storms, disease affecting crops. Any of these could create serious economic problems. Farmers lived with uncertainty. Success brought stability. Failure brought hardship. The customer spoke quietly. No one enjoyed discussing financial struggles publicly. Yet such struggles were common. Ancient economies lacked many protections modern societies take for granted. A single bad year could change lives dramatically. Damon listened sympathetically. Fortune often proved unpredictable. Prosperity and difficulty frequently alternated. By late afternoon, another visitor arrived. This one represented the opposite situation. A merchant recently returned from a successful voyage. Profits had exceeded expectations. He spoke enthusiastically about opportunities, new trade connections, growing demand, future possibilities. His optimism contrasted sharply with the farmer's concerns. Together, the two conversations reflected economic reality. Success and failure often existed side by side. One person prospered, another struggled. Such patterns appeared throughout history. The workshop remained busy. Yet as Damon worked, he found himself reflecting upon social class. Athens celebrated citizenship, public participation, civic equality among citizens. Yet economic differences remained significant. Wealthier citizens enjoyed advantages, better education, greater leisure, more influence, more opportunities. Poorer citizens faced greater challenges, longer working hours, fewer resources, greater vulnerability to misfortune. Ancient Greece produced remarkable achievements. It also contained substantial inequality. This contradiction appeared repeatedly throughout society. Late in the afternoon, Damon delivered pottery to a prosperous household. The visit offered a glimpse into wealthier living conditions, larger rooms, better furnishings, more servants, decorative objects. Comfort clearly exceeded what most families enjoyed. Yet even wealthy households faced concerns, business risks, political responsibilities, family obligations. Money solved many problems, not all problems. Human nature ensured that. While returning home, Damon passed construction workers repairing part of a public structure. The sight reminded him of another economic reality. Cities required funding. Roads, temples, public buildings, defensive walls, infrastructure cost money. Governments collected revenue through various means: taxes, fees, contributions. Public projects depended upon resources. Citizens often debated spending priorities, sometimes vigorously. Few topics generated stronger opinions than money. As evening approached, activity in the marketplace gradually slowed. Merchants counted earnings. Laborers completed final tasks. Customers made last-minute purchases. The daily cycle neared completion, yet business never truly stopped. Preparations for tomorrow began immediately. Economic life functioned as a continuous process. One day flowed into the next. Damon eventually headed home, carrying several household supplies. Along the route, he noticed a group of children playing a game involving pebbles used as imaginary money. The sight amused him. Even children absorbed economic concepts early. Trade, exchange, value, negotiation. These ideas appeared everywhere. They became part of daily experience. Back at home, dinner conversation naturally drifted toward finances. Household expenses required discussion. Future plans required discussion. Resources required management. Families throughout Athens engaged in similar conversations every evening. Wealthy families, poor families, everyone needed to make decisions. The details differed. The challenge remained universal. After the meal, Damon stepped into the courtyard. The air felt pleasant. The stars emerged gradually overhead. Another ordinary day had passed. A day filled not with dramatic battles or famous philosophical debates, but with the economic realities that quietly sustained society. Historians often remember great leaders and major events, yet civilizations depended just as much upon ordinary workers. Merchants, craftsmen, and farmers carrying out daily responsibilities. Their efforts kept everything functioning. As Damon reflected on this, he heard music drifting from a nearby street. Not festival music, not theater music, wedding music. Laughter followed, then cheering. Clearly a celebration was underway. Damon smiled. Another aspect of Greek life awaited exploration, because no matter how much people worried about money, politics, or work, they still fell in love. They still married. They still raised families. And tomorrow would reveal the fascinating realities of courtship, marriage, family life, and childhood in the ancient Greek world. The story of Greece was not only the story of cities and governments, it was also the story of homes. The wedding music continued long into the night. From his courtyard, Damon could occasionally hear bursts of laughter drifting through the nearby streets. Voices rose. Someone sang. Others joined in. A dog barked in response, seemingly annoyed by the celebration. Athens rarely remained quiet for very long. Even so, the sounds brought a smile to Damon's face. Weddings represented some of the happiest occasions in Greek life. They also revealed a great deal about how ancient families functioned. The next morning, curiosity led Damon toward the neighborhood where the celebration had taken place. The festivities were mostly finished. Guests had returned home. Decorations were being removed. Normal routines slowly reappeared. Yet people still discussed the event. A successful wedding could become local news for days. Neighbors analyzed every detail. The food, the guests, the gifts, the ceremonies, the bride's appearance, the groom's behavior. Nothing escaped attention. As Damon listened to the conversations, he reflected upon how different marriage could be in the ancient Greek world. Modern ideas about romance would have seemed unfamiliar in many households. Marriage certainly involved affection in some cases, yet family considerations often played a larger role. Parents frequently helped arrange matches. Economic concerns mattered. Social connections mattered. Family reputation mattered. Marriage was not simply a relationship between two individuals. It was often viewed as an alliance between households. The future stability of both families could depend upon it. Walking through the city, Damon passed a group of women discussing recent engagements. Although much of public political life belonged to men, women played central roles within family life. The household formed the foundation of society. Everything began there. Children were raised there. Property was managed there. Food was prepared there. Family traditions were preserved there. Many aspects of daily existence revolved around the home. For outsiders, one of the most surprising features of Greek houses was their appearance. Popular imagination often pictures marble mansions. Most homes looked far more practical. Walls surrounded courtyards. Rooms served specific functions. Decoration varied according to wealth. The average household focused on usefulness rather than luxury. Comfort existed. Extravagance was less common. As Damon continued walking, he encountered an old friend carrying his young son. The child could not have been more than 4 years old. The boy pointed excitedly at everything. Dogs, birds, carts, market stalls. Questions poured from him without pause. His father answered patiently, then less patiently, then patiently again. Parenting, Damon suspected, had changed very little across the centuries. Children filled Greek homes with energy and unpredictability. Families celebrated births enthusiastically. Children represented hope, continuity, future support, the continuation of family lines. Yet childhood itself looked different from what many modern people might expect. Young children often spent much of their time near home. As they grew older, responsibilities gradually increased. Chores appeared early. Practical skills became important. The transition toward adulthood began long before modern standards would consider it appropriate. Life expectancy and social expectations shaped these realities. Children learned quickly because society expected them to contribute relatively early. By midday, Damon arrived at the marketplace. There he encountered another reminder of family life. A father negotiating the purchase of educational supplies. The conversation soon attracted attention. Education represented an investment. Families often debated how much they could afford. Wealthier households enjoyed greater flexibility. Poorer households faced harder choices. Every parent wanted opportunities for children. Not every parent possessed the resources to provide them. Economic realities influenced family decisions constantly. Nearby, a grandmother supervised several grandchildren while their parents worked. The older woman appeared entirely in control. The children clearly understood this. Grandparents occupied important positions within many households. They preserved stories, shared experience, provided guidance, sometimes offered discipline. Generations lived much closer together than many people do today. Family networks mattered enormously. As Damon observed these interactions, he remembered stories told by his own grandparents. Stories about earlier generations, earlier conflicts, earlier hardships. The memories connected the past to the present. Greek society relied heavily upon such connections. History often traveled through families before it reached written records. During the afternoon, Damon returned briefly to his workshop. An apprentice struggled with a task. The young man's frustration became obvious. Damon corrected the mistake and demonstrated the proper technique. The lesson reminded him of another important aspect of family life. Many skills passed from one generation to another. Parents taught children. Masters taught apprentices. Knowledge moved through personal relationships. Formal schools existed, yet much learning occurred through observation and practice. A child raised among potters often became familiar with pottery. A child raised among merchants learned commerce. Family environments shaped futures significantly. Later in the day, Damon visited a customer whose household included several generations living together. The arrangement offered advantages: more hands available for work, more support during illness, more assistance with children. At times, however, it also created tension. Different generations rarely agreed about everything. The household Damon visited proved no exception. A lively disagreement had emerged regarding a planned marriage. 3 generations possessed 3 different opinions. Each believed its position perfectly reasonable. The discussion showed no sign of ending soon. Damon wisely avoided involvement. Certain debates offered little reward. As evening approached, he passed a group of boys playing a game in the street. Their rules seemed complicated. Their arguments seemed constant. Every few minutes, someone accused another of cheating. Then the game resumed. The cycle repeated endlessly. Watching them, Damon reflected on how childhood prepared people for adult life in unexpected ways. Negotiation, competition, friendship, conflict, all appeared in children's games long before they appeared in public affairs. Nearby, several girls helped prepare food under the supervision of older relatives. Different expectations often shaped the lives of boys and girls. Greek society assigned distinct roles to men and women. The exact details varied between regions and families, yet the general pattern remained widespread. Modern readers frequently notice these differences immediately. Ancient Greeks generally viewed them as normal. Every society carries assumptions that seem natural to its members. Future generations often view those assumptions differently. As sunset approached, families throughout Athens began gathering for evening meals. The city slowly shifted from public life to private life. Work ended, doors closed, households reunited. The transition happened daily, yet it remained important. Family meals provided opportunities to share news, discuss problems, plan future activities, strengthen relationships. Many of the conversations that shaped society occurred around household tables rather than in public assemblies. Back at home, Damon joined his own family for dinner. The discussion ranged widely. Work, neighbors, upcoming festivals, childhood memories, future hopes. Nothing particularly historic. Nothing that future generations would record. Yet these ordinary conversations formed the fabric of life. Historians often focus upon major events. Most people experience history through smaller moments, family moments. During the meal, one of the children asked a question about marriage. The question produced laughter, then explanations, then additional questions. Soon, everyone contributed. Damon listened with amusement. Curiosity existed within homes just as much as schools, perhaps even more. After dinner, the family spent time together in the courtyard. The evening air felt pleasant. Lamps flickered softly. Voices from neighboring homes drifted through the darkness. Athens seemed peaceful, yet Damon knew appearances could be deceiving. Every household contained worries, financial concerns, health concerns, family concerns, uncertainties about the future. Ancient life offered many joys. It also offered many hardships. Families relied upon one another to navigate both. Eventually, the The children grew tired. One by one, they disappeared indoors. The neighborhood quieted. The stars emerged overhead. Damon remained outside a little longer, reflecting, observing, appreciating the calm. Tomorrow would reveal another side of Greek daily existence, a side far less cheerful than weddings and family celebrations, because every household eventually faced illness, injury, aging, and death. The ancient Greeks spent much of their lives trying to understand these realities, sometimes through medicine, sometimes through religion, sometimes through philosophy. Tomorrow, Damon would discover how ordinary Greeks confronted the unavoidable challenges of health, sickness, and mortality. The following morning began with troubling news. Before Damon had even finished breakfast, a neighbor arrived carrying concerns about an elderly relative who had fallen ill during the night. The situation was not yet serious. At least no one believed it was serious. But illness possessed a way of creating uncertainty. A healthy person could wake feeling strong one day and weak the next. Ancient Greeks understood this reality all too well. Life offered many pleasures. It also offered many dangers. Disease ranked among the most feared. Unlike modern societies, ancient communities possessed limited medical knowledge and few truly effective treatments for many illnesses. People did what they could. Sometimes they succeeded. Sometimes they did not. As Damon walked through the streets of Athens that morning, he found health already becoming a common topic of conversation. The elderly relative, a neighbor recovering from an injury, a child suffering from a fever. Stories moved quickly. Communities paid attention when sickness appeared. Every family knew illness could spread. Every family knew misfortune might arrive unexpectedly. Near the marketplace, Damon encountered a physician. Doctors occupied an interesting position within Greek society. Some earned considerable respect. Others attracted skepticism. Results mattered. A physician who successfully treated patients gained a valuable reputation. A physician whose treatments frequently failed faced difficult questions. Medicine remained as much an art as a science. Perhaps more so, Greek physicians observed symptoms carefully. They studied the body. They developed theories regarding health and disease. Some ideas proved surprisingly insightful. Others missed the mark completely. Yet many genuinely sought understanding. Curiosity about the human body fit naturally within broader Greek habits of inquiry. The physician Damon encountered carried a small case of instruments and supplies. Nothing about his appearance seemed dramatic. No elaborate robes, no mystical symbols, just a man traveling between patients. The simplicity struck Damon. Many people imagined healers possessing special powers. Most physicians spent much of their time asking questions, making observations, and trying to help as best they could. Their success varied. As the physician continued on his way, Damon reflected upon how differently Greeks understood health. One popular theory involved the balance of bodily humors. According to this idea, health depended upon maintaining proper equilibrium within the body. Illness resulted when that balance became disrupted. The theory influenced medical thinking for centuries. Modern science would eventually replace such explanations. Yet for ancient observers, the theory seemed logical. They attempted to explain complex phenomena using the knowledge available to them. Human beings have always done the same. By mid-morning, Damon arrived at his workshop. Work proceeded normally. The pottery wheel turned. Clay took shape. Customers arrived. Yet health concerns repeatedly surfaced throughout conversations. One customer described a recent injury. Another discussed dietary advice. A third recommended a particular treatment for headaches. Everyone seemed to possess medical opinions. Not all agreed. This, too, felt familiar. Even today, people enjoy offering health advice, whether requested or not. As the day progressed, Damon delivered pottery to a household where a family member was recovering from illness. The atmosphere inside differed noticeably from usual visits. Voices remained quieter. Movements seemed more careful. Concern lingered in every conversation. Illness affected entire households, not just patients. Family members worried. Responsibilities shifted. Daily routines changed. The emotional burden could become significant. The recovering man appeared tired, but improving. Relatives expressed cautious optimism. No one wished to celebrate too early. Experience encouraged patience. Recovery often proceeded slowly. While there, Damon observed several remedies arranged nearby. Herbs, bandages, prepared foods, various items intended to support healing. Ancient medicine drew upon many sources: observation, tradition, experience, religious practices, herbal knowledge. Different approaches frequently overlapped. People rarely separated them neatly. As Damon left, he passed a small shrine where offerings had been placed. Health and religion often intersected. Individuals prayed for recovery. Families sought divine assistance. Sacred sites attracted visitors hopping for healing. The boundaries between medicine and faith remained fluid. Many Greeks saw no contradiction. A physician could provide treatment. The gods could provide assistance. Both seemed useful. Near midday, Damon encountered a veteran carrying a noticeable limp. The injury originated years earlier during military service, yet it remained part of daily life. Permanent injuries appeared frequently in ancient societies. Accidents, warfare, labor, simple bad luck. Many people carried visible reminders of past hardships. Modern medical care can often reduce such consequences. Ancient people possessed fewer options. They adapted as best they could. The veteran seemed cheerful despite the discomfort. Years had taught him acceptance. Some wounds healed, others simply became part of life. As afternoon approached, Damon visited the marketplace. There he noticed a crowd gathered around a traveling healer. Such figures attracted attention regularly. Some possessed genuine knowledge. Others relied heavily upon confidence and persuasion. Distinguishing between them could prove difficult. The healer displayed various remedies while explaining their benefits. The audience listened carefully. Hope can be powerful, especially when people suffer. Throughout history, individuals have searched for treatments promising relief. Sometimes they found effective solutions. Sometimes they found disappointment. Human nature changed little. Nearby, a merchant discussed aging. The topic arose because his father had recently reached an impressive age. Longevity earned admiration. Many people died young. Childhood illnesses, accidents, disease, hard physical labor, numerous risks affected life expectancy. Reaching old age often felt like an achievement. Elderly individuals commanded respect, partly because they had survived so much. Their memories connected communities to earlier generations. Their experiences provided perspective. Yet aging brought challenges. Weakness, pain, reduced independence. No society escapes these realities. Greek society confronted them just as others have. During the late afternoon, Damon encountered a funeral procession moving slowly through the city. Conversations quieted as it passed. Funerals represented important community events. Death touched every household eventually. The Greeks developed elaborate customs surrounding mourning and remembrance. Family members participated in rituals. Friends paid respects. Communities acknowledged loss. The procession moved steadily toward its destination. Participants appeared solemn. The scene reminded Damon of how fragile life could be. One day, a person shared meals, conversations, and plans. The next day, others carried memories. Every society develops ways to confront this reality. The Greeks turned to stories, religion, philosophy, ritual, reflection. None eliminated grief, yet they offered meaning. Many philosophers spent considerable time thinking about mortality. What makes a good life? How should people face death? What remains after a person is gone? Such questions attracted attention because they mattered deeply, not merely as abstract ideas, as personal realities. Later that evening, Damon returned home. The day's events remained on his mind. Illness, recovery, aging, death, topics most people preferred to avoid, yet impossible to ignore. The family gathered for dinner. Conversation remained lighter than earlier reflections. Stories were shared. Laughter appeared. Children discussed their day. Life continued. That fact seemed important. Human communities persist through both joy and sorrow. Celebrations occur, losses occur, the cycle continues. After the meal, Damon sat quietly beneath the stars. The city around him gradually settled into sleep. Lamps dimmed, voices faded. The night grew peaceful. Looking upward, he considered how much of Greek life involved searching for understanding. Understanding health, understanding illness, understanding existence itself. Some questions received answers, others remained mysteries. Perhaps they always would, yet the Greeks rarely stopped asking. Tomorrow, another aspect of daily life awaited exploration, one less serious, one filled with color, noise, crowds, and excitement. Because despite hardships, ancient Greeks loved celebrations. They loved festivals, public gatherings, competitions, music, dancing, spectacles, and tomorrow Damon would experience one of the grandest truths about Greek society. When the Greeks decided to celebrate, they did so with remarkable enthusiasm. The first signs of the festival appeared before sunrise. Long before Damon left his home, he could hear movement throughout the neighborhood. Doors opened earlier than usual. Voices carried through the cool morning air. Families prepared food. Children hurried through chores with unusual enthusiasm. Everyone seemed excited. Athens was preparing to celebrate. For outsiders, Greek festivals could appear overwhelming. The crowds, the noise, the processions, the ceremonies, the competitions, the endless activity. Yet, for the people living within the city, these gatherings represented some of the most important moments of the year. Festivals offered something rare, a break from routine. For most days, life revolved around responsibilities. Work, family, trade, politics, obligations never completely disappeared. During festivals, however, ordinary routines relaxed. People came together. Communities renewed connections. Shared experiences strengthened social bonds. The city transformed itself. As Damon walked toward the center of Athens, the streets already filled with activity. Vendors prepared stalls. Musicians tuned instruments. Officials organized participants. Visitors arrived from neighboring communities. Everywhere people moved with purpose. The atmosphere felt contagious. Even those determined to remain serious eventually found themselves smiling. Children perhaps enjoyed festivals most of all. For them, celebrations felt magical. The city looked different, sounded different, behaved differently. Ordinary rules seemed slightly less important. Adults often felt much the same. They simply hid it better. By mid-morning, a large procession began moving through the streets. Participants carried ceremonial objects. Religious officials performed traditional duties. Citizens lined the route. Some watched respectfully. Others chatted with neighbors while observing. The Greeks rarely separated celebration from religion entirely. Many festivals honored particular gods. Ceremonies reinforced connections between communities and the divine. Faith formed part of public life, not merely private belief. The procession moved steadily forward. Music accompanied it. Drums, flutes, voices singing together. The sounds echoed through the city. Damon noticed visitors from distant regions watching with fascination. Athens attracted travelers regularly. Festivals offered especially good reasons to visit. They provided entertainment, business opportunities, cultural experiences, political discussions, something for almost everyone. Nearby, merchants enjoyed brisk business. Food vendors served hungry crowds. Craftsmen displayed products. Traders negotiated deals. Economic activity flourished alongside celebration. Festivals benefited more than spirits. They benefited wallets as well. Human beings have long understood how to combine commerce and entertainment. As the day progressed, competitions began. Athletic events attracted enormous attention. Spectators gathered quickly. Predictions circulated. Friendly arguments emerged. Some people supported local competitors. Others admired individual talent, regardless of origin. Victory remained highly desirable. Athletes competed intensely. Crowds reacted enthusiastically. Cheers erupted. Groans followed mistakes. Excitement spread through the audience. Watching the spectators often proved nearly as entertaining as watching the competitors. Nearby, musical contests unfolded. Skilled performers demonstrated talent acquired through years of practice. The Greeks appreciated music deeply. It appeared in education, religion, entertainment, public ceremonies, daily life. Musical ability earned respect. A successful performance could bring considerable admiration. Damon spent part of the afternoon listening to musicians. The variety impressed him. Different instruments, different styles, different moods. Some songs encouraged celebration. Others inspired reflection. Music possessed remarkable power. It could unite strangers, influence emotions, create memories. Entire generations remembered certain melodies. As sunlight began its slow descent across the sky, theatrical performances attracted growing crowds. The theater once again became a focal point of public attention. Actors appeared. Stories unfolded. Audiences laughed, reflected, reacted. The familiar magic returned. Throughout the festival, Damon repeatedly noticed something important. Nearly every aspect of Greek life appeared somewhere within the celebration. Religion, politics, art, athletics, business, family, community. The festival acted like a mirror. It reflected the society that created it. To understand the Greeks, one only needed to observe their celebrations. Everything important eventually appeared. During a pause between events, Damon sat beside an elderly citizen who had attended festivals for decades. The old man spoke fondly about earlier celebrations. Some memories remained crystal clear. Others had blurred with time. Yet one theme remained constant: community. People remembered victories. They remembered performances. They remembered famous visitors. Most of all, they remembered being together. Shared experiences endured. As evening approached, the city became even more beautiful. Hundreds of lamps illuminated streets and buildings. Music drifted through the darkness. Laughter echoed between walls. Friends reunited. Families gathered. Stories circulated. The atmosphere felt almost timeless. Looking around, Damon realized he had witnessed countless aspects of Greek life over the past months. The marketplace, the harbor, the courts, the theaters, the schools, the workshops, the homes, the military training grounds, the festivals. Together, they formed a picture far richer than most outsiders imagined. Ancient Greeks were not merely philosophers discussing ideas beneath marble columns. They were people, complicated people, hardworking people, curious people, ambitious people, sometimes wise, sometimes foolish, sometimes generous, sometimes selfish, much like human beings everywhere. They worried about money, argued with neighbors, raised children, fell in love, grew old, celebrated successes, mourned losses, laughed at jokes, enjoyed good meals, dreamed about better futures. Their world looked different from ours, yet many of their experiences felt surprisingly familiar. That perhaps explained why their stories endured. Across centuries, across continents, across generations, the sun finally disappeared beyond the horizon. Darkness settled gently across Athens. Yet the festival continued. Music still played. Conversations still flowed. The city remained awake. Damon walked slowly home through streets glowing with lamplight. Around him unfolded the strange, fascinating, ordinary life of ancient Greece. Not a world of constant heroism. Not a world of endless philosophy. A world of real people living real lives. And perhaps that made it far more interesting. As he reached his courtyard, he paused one final time beneath the stars. The same stars that had watched over countless generations before him. The same stars that would watch over countless generations after. Then he smiled, stepped inside, and closed the door behind him. The story of one ordinary Greek had ended. Yet the story of Greece itself would continue for centuries, changing, growing, struggling, enduring, leaving behind echoes that would reach far beyond the ancient world. If you want to continue the journey, the next video is waiting.